The alarm clock rings at 7 o'clock a.m. and the hand immediately slams down to silence it. Reiko sits up slowly, grabs her glasses from the nightstand, and looks blankly up at the ceiling. She's wearing only a revealing top that hangs loosely from her shoulders, a lace of her underwear barely covered. She turns on the small TV in the corner, letting the low chatter of a TV ad fill the silence. She walks over to the counter and slices a piece of watermelon for breakfast, eating it while standing. She picks up a cigarette and a lighter from the cluttered table, then steps out onto the veranda. Sitting back in a plastic chair, she lights a cigarette and stares ahead. Her underwear peeks through her oversized shirt, but she doesn't bother adjusting it. Her building looks old, and so do the neighboring ones near hers. After finishing her smoke, she places the leftover watermelon in the fridge. She heads to her bedroom and changes into a semi-formal, sexy-looking outfit. She grabs her keys, locks the door behind her, and makes her way through the chaotic alley. A few locals greet her. She acknowledges them with minimal expression, not stopping as she continues forward. Eventually, she reaches her final stop, a low-rise office building. At the front desk, her boss looks up and tells her she should clock in soon. She's cutting it close. Reiko nods and quickly picks up her card, stepping toward the scanner. Just then, a guy rushes past, Hajime. He snatches his card from the tray and clocks in ahead of her. His time is 8:59, while Reiko's time is 9:01 and her DTR now reads late. They spend the morning handling their routine tasks. Reiko walks over to his desk and hands over the listings for today. She keeps her tone composed, but she brings up the fact that she got marked late because he cut in line. Hajime tries to shrug it off, but his temper begins to rise from her complaints, so he offers to treat her to lunch to make up for it. Reiko returns to her desk. Her boss chats with her again. He says Second Kowloon isn't an ideal living space, but the population never goes down. Maybe people have no better option. Reiko doesn't respond. Her face tightens slightly. At lunch, Reiko suggests a Hawaiian cafe that recently opened nearby. She saw a flyer earlier in the week and wanted to try it, but Hajime interrupts, brushing off the idea. He says they should go to his usual spot instead, Tintin Eatery. They end up there and Reiko stares blankly at her plate. She doesn't look thrilled. Hajime notices. He pauses with his chopsticks halfway to his mouth and asks if something's wrong. Reiko admits she was hoping to try the Hawaiian place. Hajime shrugs and says Tintin's food is great, she'll see. Reiko doesn't respond. She's distracted, adjusting her glasses more than usual. Something's off about her vision. Hajime comments on it. He says her eyes must have gotten worse again. She doesn't say much. Then she pulls out eye drops, Habanuma Pharmaceutical. The moment Hajime sees it, his mood shifts. He raises his voice, saying he doesn't trust that brand anymore. Ever since the son of the owner took over, things have gone downhill. He mentions a sketchy beauty line with the same director and says it creeps him out. He advises her that if her eyes are bothering her, she should just massage some pressure points. He leans in and offers to do it for her, but Reiko pulls back, clearly uncomfortable. With a dry smirk, she says she'd rather not be lunked out by a gorilla. The insult stings. Hajime scowls, his jaw tightening. The tension is heavy between them until their food arrives, breaking the moment. They eat quietly for a while. Then Reiko speaks again. She brings up a room in Sejong Tower that's been vacant for half a year. Hajime explains why. Too much sun in the afternoon, no AC. The interior looks dated. He says if someone just painted it properly, it might look better. Reiko mentions how Hajime once fixed a door at another unit. He says everything in Kowloon is old, landlords are stingy. There's no point calling maintenance over small flaws, but he still wants tenants to feel comfortable. After the meal, they walk back. Reiko mentions the time and says maybe they could grab tea somewhere. Hajime cuts her off and says she should see an optometrist instead. Her glasses are clearly off. He says they'll get tea another time, then walks off. As he disappears down the alley, he stops to play with some kids who recognize him. Reiko doesn't follow. She heads to the nearest clinic and gets her eyes checked. Later that afternoon, she returned to the office without her glasses. Her vision suddenly sharp minus 20/20ths. The boss notices immediately and compliments her, saying she looks good without them. Then he turns to Hajime and asks what he thinks. Hajime glances at her and replies coolly, saying he prefers the glasses. Later that day, Reiko and Hajime are on the terrace, burning old wood and furniture. Smoke rises steadily as they toss scraps into the furnace. After throwing in a few more pieces, Hajime stretches his back and notices the triangular flying object hovering above them, the generic Terra. The sight prompts him to think that maybe you're going to be punished for burning things. Reiko wonders if he's against it. It's clear that he is. To him, using tax money to create a fake Earth feels pointless and frustrating. As the fire crackles, the two of them smoke in silence while gazing at the view below. Reiko begins to wonder how long that new place from earlier will last. New places in Kowloon don't usually last long. They open with enthusiasm and close quietly not long after. Hajime views it differently. For him, Kowloon is meant to be nostalgic. The flickering streetlights, the moldy alleys, and the noisy neighbors all form part of its identity. He even compares it to falling in love. Perhaps that is what makes people stay. In his mind, Kowloon should remain the way it is. That's why new places don't stay. They don't need them. The place is supposed to stay nostalgic. Reiko disagrees. She doesn't feel any nostalgia for the place itself. What she does feel, unexpectedly, is a sense of nostalgia in Hajime. The moment shifts after she says that, a subtle awkwardness settling in. She tries to clarify her words, but when she turns toward Hajime, he is already staring at her. Their eyes meet, and the air between them tightens. He notices her crow's feet and silently teases her with it. The next day, Reiko arrives at work wearing glasses again. Though her vision tested fine the day before, she isn't used to seeing her face without them, so she decides to wear fake ones. Hajime immediately teases her about hiding her crow's feet. As she turns to face him, she notices a streak of dirt on his shirt cuff. He explains that it's from his odd habit. Whenever he walks through Kowloon and sees numbers written on walls, he touches them. It's something he feels compelled to do, like an unspoken rule he's always followed. The day proceeds with their usual tasks. Hajime finishes early and checks on Reiko, who still has more to do. She tells him she'll stay longer, but after clocking out, he turns off the office lights without warning and insists that she come out with him for dinner. As they walk, Reiko realizes Hajime isn't heading toward his usual food spot. Instead, they reach a place called Sunset Avenue. Reiko didn't expect this from Hajime, but this, he seems to believe, is what makes Kowloon Kowloon. They explore several food stalls, trying different dishes and drinks. After a while, Reiko complains that she can't eat anymore. Hajime suggests one final stop, and they enter a place called the Goldfish Tea House. The bartender named Tao recognizes Hajime immediately, which makes Reiko think he's been here often. They order coffee, and along with it, the server brings out a slice of watermelon on the house. Reiko eats it quickly despite claiming earlier that she is full. She reasons that watermelon is mostly water, so hardly counts. Hajime laughingly reacts to this. As he smokes, Reiko stares at him and suddenly feels nostalgic again. She likes her own cigarette and tells him it's best to smoke after eating watermelon. This statement makes Hajime think. It reminds him of someone who used to say something similar. Hajime appreciates these kinds of quirks. They bring back memories and make him feel connected to something or someone. As they prepare to leave, Tao thanks them and casually assumes Reiko is Hajime's girlfriend. Reiko freezes, surprised by the comment, and tries to correct the assumption, but Hajime interrupts her and urges her to hurry up. Outside, she brings up the mistaken identity, but Hajime only laughs it off. She worries aloud that it might be awkward if he ever brings his real girlfriend there, but Hajime brushes off her concern. Reiko stops walking. When she turns around, the moon is full above her. The generic Terra floats beside it as well. Lost in thought, she doesn't hear Hajime calling out loud to her. He approaches and hands her a small plastic container. Inside is a goldfish. It's a souvenir for the night, something to keep in her apartment. Reiko accepts it and takes it home. Later at home, she places the goldfish in a small glass container. As she watches it swim in slow circles, her thoughts return to what Hajime said earlier. The next day, there is an announcement from the Kowloon Environmental Management Center. A photochemical smog warning has been issued, along with a heat and high humidity advisory. Citizens are strongly advised to avoid outdoor activities as much as possible. Meanwhile, Reiko is out painting a vacant room in Sejong Tower. Despite the advisory, she pushes through, determined to finish what she started. Her body is drenched in sweat, her clothes clinging to her skin. She has the fan turned on and has gone through multiple bottles of water, yet the heat is unbearable. One final wall remains unpainted. She looks at it and convinces herself to power through. Just a bit more, and it will be done. But as she tries to go near it, her vision begins to blur. Her knees shake, and before she can brace herself, her body collapses. Just then, Hajime enters and catches her before she hits the ground. He steadies her in his arms and mutters that heroes always arrive late. He told her she should ask for help if she really wanted the job done. He offers her a can of tea and asks what got into her. Reiko tells him she only wanted the tenants to feel comfortable too. Hajime teases that she's starting to have an effect on him, and casually picks up the roller and begins painting the final wall himself. Reiko sits down in a corner, sipping the tea as she watches Hajime finish the work she started. Her eyes are tired, her face flushed, and sweat drips from her forehead. She lowers her head to her knees. She mutters to herself under her breath that she's in love with this man. The following day, Reiko walks around searching for the tea house they had visited recently, the one with the goldfish and coffee. She walks down alleys and retraces her steps but fails to find it. Confused, she gives up and returns to the office. Inside, the place is silent. No one is around. She checks the schedule and sees that the boss is out in a business meeting. As she scans the room, she notices a pair of feet sticking out from one corner. Curious, she walks closer and finds Hajime lying down, sleeping soundly. She tells him to get up, but he doesn't respond. She tries again, louder this time, but still no reaction. So she mimics their boss's voice to mess with him. That finally gets a reaction. Hajime opens his eyes just a bit, sees Reiko, and without warning, pulls her down beside him. Suddenly, Hajime starts kissing her. His arms wrap her, his lips press against hers. At first, Reiko stays still, stunned by the suddenness. Then his kiss deepens, pressure and heat. Reiko starts to resist. She struggles against his grip, trying to push him off. When Hajime's eyes fully open and he realizes what he's doing, he immediately pulls back and shoves her away. Standing up, he mutters that he got the wrong person before storming out. Reiko remains on the floor, stunned. Her hands cover her mouth, trying to process what just happened. Later that day, they work as if nothing happened. Hajime breaks the silence first, asking Reiko what food she brought. He talks to her casually as though the kiss earlier meant nothing. Reiko feels foolish for being stuck on something that clearly didn't matter to him. When he left, she noticed papers falling from his desk, his usual mess. She bends down to pick them up and sees something in the open drawer, a photograph peeking through the edge. Curious, she stares at it. It's a picture of Hajime with someone. The other person's face isn't visible, but something about the photo feels familiar. Reiko suddenly remembers the kiss and the mention of quirk, how she reminded him of someone else. Her fingers tremble, then she picks up the photo and her eyes widen with shock for what she sees. Shaken, she rushes to find answers. She heads straight to the Goldfish Tea House. Upon entering, Tao immediately greets her with a smile. She orders an iced coffee and, without thinking, pulls the photo from her bag. Tao sees it and grins, recognizing it immediately. He casually mentions how they all had fun that day. Reiko doesn't understand. She asks him if he knows more about it. Tao is surprised, as of course he took that picture when Hajime proposed. Reiko stares blankly at the photo, now certain of what she sees. It's Hajime, standing in this exact tea house, next to a woman who looks exactly like her, but she doesn't remember taking it at all. Their names are even written together above the words, "Congratulations." Her mind spins. Now she is more curious about the woman Hajime thought he kissed. Walking home through a noisy alley in Kowloon, Reiko can't stop thinking about her recent conversation with Tao. Her thoughts are interrupted by a call from someone named Xiaowei. On the other end, a loud, unsettling noise blares through the line. Xiaowei complains that her neighbor's noise is unbearable. Curious and concerned, Reiko decides to look into it. She walks down the hallway and knocks on the apartment door next to Xiaowei's. When the door opens, a flood of stuffed toy-shaped balloons spills. A flustered woman struggles to step through them, clearly panicked, assuming the person knocking is someone expecting a delivery. She freezes when she realizes she doesn't recognize Reiko. After a brief moment, she invites Reiko inside and offers her a hot drink. The woman explains that she's working on a large order and needs to finish 50 balloon figures, hence the noise. But while she speaks, she notices that Reiko seems distant, not really hearing anything she says. Something is clearly bothering her. Reiko hesitates, uncertain whether to share her thoughts with a stranger. Still, she pulls out a small photo and hands it to the woman. It's a picture of Reiko and Hajime, but Reiko quietly admits that something feels wrong. She and Hajime never took that photo. In fact, they were never even in a relationship. The woman in the picture might look like her, but she is convinced it isn't her. What unsettles her more is that she has no memory of her past. She didn't notice it at first, but now she realizes there are no clear recollections, no history to ground her. She doesn't remember who she was before. The woman listens and then answers calmly. If Reiko believes that the woman in the photo isn't her, then perhaps she is right. She explains that she, too, lives without a past. Her body has undergone so many changes that she considers herself a completely different person. She has discarded her old identity, and with that, her memories. She chooses who she is now and who she refuses to be. Maybe, she tells Reiko, that's an answer worth holding on to. She offers Reiko a tart and they eat in quiet comfort. Back at the office, Hajime notices his drawer slightly open and sees that the photo is gone. He thinks back to when he first met Reiko in this very office. She was already there when he arrived, sitting at her desk as if she had always belonged. He remembers how she introduced him to Kowloon, to the lucky number 8, to elderly mahjong players, and to their favorite eatery, Tintin. She once told him about smoking after eating watermelon, something she claimed gave a unique sensation. He recalls a moment on the terrace, both of them leaning on the rail, smoking as the city bustled below. She told him Kowloon felt nostalgic, like falling in love. It was a place she fell in love with. Hajime, more cynical, believed the district would soon be demolished. But Reiko refused that idea. That moment, Hajime wonders how can someone love something they know will be gone one day. The next evening, Reiko meets the balloon girl again, whose name is Yame. They share a meal of Hong Kong chicken and drinks, laughing easily like old friends. Reiko seems lighter. Yame is glad, but Reiko reveals she is still curious about the mysterious photo. She suggests the most straightforward option, ask Hajime directly. But when she sees Reiko's face turn red, she understands. Reiko is in love with him. In her mind, Hajime's silence about the photo must mean he's hiding something. If he knew the truth, why hasn't he said anything? Yame proposes a theory. Maybe the woman in the photo really is Reiko, but she's suffering from amnesia. Hajime could be waiting, hoping her memories return. That would explain his silence. But if that's the case, Reiko is left wondering, who could she be in Hajime's eyes now? The next day, both Reiko and Hajime are busy at work. Hajime suggests they take a break and grab lunch. Reiko recommends a new place with good lemon chicken, but Hajime wants to return to their usual spot. That very moment, Reiko suddenly speaks. She feels nostalgic around him. She wonders if he feels it too. Hajime does. She turns to face him, and he turns to meet her gaze. He leans in, and for a moment, the space between them tightens. But instead of saying something meaningful, he comments on her unpierced ears and how her crow's feet are starting to show. Then, half-joking, he insists they eat boiled dumplings for beauty benefits, which Reiko declines and turns back to her work. So Hajime leaves her there alone. After Hajime leaves, Reiko finally exhales, tension slipping from her shoulders, though her face remains visibly annoyed. She picks up the photo and places it back in Hajime's drawer where it originally belonged. Just before closing it, she shoots one last glance at the image and snaps on it, frustration flickering across her face before she pushes the drawer shut. The following morning, a televised advertisement announces free medical checkups sponsored by Hebinuma General Medical Center, open to all residents of Kowloon for that day only. Reiko decides to go with Yame. Both arrive at the clinic wearing simple white robes, each flipping through the catalog of services they receive at the entrance. Yame appears excited, especially about meeting Dr. Hebinuma, who seems to be a local favorite. As they settle into their place, a small girl walks over to them. Xiaowei, the same girl who once called Reiko to complain about Yame's noise. Xiaowei and Reiko have grown closer, mostly due to Xiaowei living in a building managed by Reiko's company. So she introduces the two to each other, and the three of them proceed through the different tests, vision screening, height and weight measurements, and blood work. Their checklist eventually leads them to a final procedure, the barium swallow test. The name alone already sounds yucky. Just as they prepare for it, a clinic worker announces free cosmetic surgery consultations. Yaomei brightens immediately and changes course. Riko, meanwhile, notices a section in the catalog detailing anti-aging procedures. Her mind drifts back to Hajume's casual remarks about her crow's feet showing. With little hesitation, she signs up for the consultation, and Yaomei does the same as well. Later that day, Hajume stops by the Goldfish Tea House. He expects to find Tao behind the counter, but a new bartender greets him instead. The new employee doesn't know much. Tao quit unexpectedly and hasn't been seen since. That same day, Reiko and Yaomei also visit the tea house, hoping to speak with Tao and perhaps learn more about the mysterious photo. But like Hajume, they leave disappointed. With Tao gone, the answers they are looking for will never be found. On her way home, Reiko and Yaomei wander through an alley where a street vendor sells earrings of all shapes and styles. The glint of silver and pearl draws Reiko's attention. She recalls Hajume's offhand comment about her ears not being pierced, then remembers the girl in the photo, wearing pearl earrings. Noticing how interested Reiko is in them, Yaomei picks out a pair that closely resembles those in the photo and hands them to her. She tries them on, checking herself in a small mirror. Yaomei watches quietly, studying her expression. The next day, Hajume attempts to track Tao online. Since he personally arranged Teo's housing, finding him should be straightforward. Yet every search leads to a dead end. System errors show up like never before. Reiko arrives at the office soon after. Hajume notices immediately the same pearl earrings from the photo are now clipped to her ears. He walks closer, but before he can react further, Reiko clarifies that they're just clip-on. His expression quickly changes from bright to matte, and he leaves without another word. After witnessing his abrupt departure, Reiko heads straight to Yaomei's apartment. She arrives frustrated. She even drops the earrings to the floor, and her eyes are wet with tears as she reflects on how ridiculous she feels. She went to such lengths to attract Hajume's attention, only to be dismissed. Yaomei welcomes her inside and offers sweets, giving her space to breathe. Meanwhile, Hajume sits alone in a dark alley. Rain slowly pours from the sky. He stares ahead, unmoving, lost in thought. That night, Reiko also remains restless on her bee. Her thoughts fracture to parallel versions of herself, each trying something new, reacting differently, altering details in pursuit of clarity. After a while, she rises. She gathers the earrings, the glasses, and the clothes she wore that day, carefully folds them, and places them in a box. She seals it, slides it on top of her cabinet, and leaves it hidden in the quiet dark. At work, Reiko steps out to the veranda and lights up a piece of cigarette. Rain pours steadily from the sky, creating a soft rhythm against the concrete. A moment later, Hajume joins her, also holding a cigarette in hand. They stand side by side in silence, the sound of rainfall filling the space between them. Eventually, Hajume speaks, apologizing for his behavior the day before, admitting he acted out of frustration, which is childish. Reiko accepts this, appearing calm at first, but then her tone shifts. She tells him bluntly that his actions were foolish. The honesty catches Hajume off guard. He had expected a quiet acceptance, not criticism. Reiko, however, doesn't dwell on it. As a condition for accepting his apology, she declares that she gets to choose where they'll eat lunch. Hajume agrees, and she selects a place known for its lemon chicken. By evening, they return there for dinner. At the restaurant, Hajume tries the lemon chicken Reiko recommends. She watches him closely, her expression unreadable, until he finally comments that it tastes good. Her face brightens dramatically with his words, but he still insists that the dumplings are better. After their meal, they step outside. The rain has stopped, but the pavement remains slick. As Reiko steps forward, she slips slightly, but Hajume quickly catches her by the hand. Their eyes meet. Though Reiko moves to let go, Hajume's grip remains firm for a moment longer than necessary, as if reluctant to release her. Eventually, he lets go and reminds her to be careful. They both look up at the sky, where the artificial glow of generic Terra beams brighter than usual. Beneath this light, the two of them share a quiet, romantic moment. Later, Reiko and Yaomei proceed with their scheduled consultation at the cosmetic clinic. Reiko sits in the waiting area, browsing through a catalog, trying to decide which anti-aging procedure she wants. Yaomei notices she has her regular makeup on for the procedure. Reiko seems unaware of why that matters, but Yaomei insists it would be impolite to meet Dr. Habinuma without at least some lipstick, so Reiko takes out one from her purse. Reiko hesitates for a moment. The color reminds her of the girl in the photo, but she applies it anyway. When it's Reiko's turn, she enters the consultation room where the doctor greets her. She tells him about her concern, specifically the crow's feet around her eyes. The doctor receives a file on his computer and pauses to read it. Then, as he examines her, he leans in, touching her face too much it almost feels weird. He remarks that it has a glow and warmth to it. His gaze lingers, and the intensity of his attention unsettles her. He begins to ask unrelated questions about her job, her marital status, her family, and even her household structure. Reiko answers honestly, but her answers only lead to more confusion. She can't recall anything from her past. Her memories are missing. The doctor notes her fragmented memory and smiles, as though he's reached a private conclusion. He informs her that, unusually, her wrinkles have no visible history. Unlike ordinary signs of aging that develop gradually, hers seem to have appeared all at once, as if they've always been there. The remark catches Riko off guard. She stiffens, trying to comprehend what that could mean. If her wrinkles have no history and her memories are incomplete, then perhaps those memories never existed in the first place. The doctor then leans in closer, speaking softly. He tells her that what truly matters is that she exists in the present. The words confuse her, and her discomfort grows when she notices a subtle shift in the doctor's appearance. His features seem distorted, his tongue unnaturally long, his eyes taking on an abnormal form. Riko freezes in place as his hand remains pressed against her cheek and her lips, removing her lipstick. Moments later, Riko bursts through the consultation room door. She storms down the hallway, grabbing Yame's hand without a word and dragging her away from the clinic. Inside the consultation room, the doctor stands by the window, watching the two women leave. He mutters to himself, commenting that the lipstick Riko wore didn't suit her at all. Then slowly he wipes the same shade of lipstick from his own mouth, laughing softly to himself. It's too wonderful, he says. He might just lose his mind. Hajime recalls walking through Kowloon with Reiko. Earlier that day, they assisted an elderly resident in repairing furniture. As they made their way back through a narrow alley, the dense humidity clung to them. Without warning, Hajime dropped his tools and his knees faltered, causing him to fall to the ground. A sudden wave of dizziness overwhelmed him. Riko observed him carefully, suspecting heat stroke, so without hesitation, she suggested they return to her nearby apartment so he could rest and rehydrate. Reaching her apartment, he hesitated. Entering a woman's private space felt intimate, perhaps too personal, but the oppressive heat left him little choice. He agreed and followed her inside. Her apartment was modest. Thin white curtains floated gently in the breeze that drifted through open windows. The air inside felt cooler, windier. Hajime moved to the sink, turned on the tap, and splashed cold water on his face. A crumpled tube of toothpaste lay nearby. Inside the refrigerator, he found a glass of water left uncovered, intentionally placed there by Reiko to allow the chlorine smell to dissipate before consumption. He drank it in a single, deliberate motion. He then sat on the edge of her bed, scanning the room. Everything was neat and orderly. There was no sign of plush toys. Peeking through the window, he saw Reiko smoking on the veranda, her gaze lost in the distance. As Hajime watched Reiko on the veranda, she suddenly spoke, breaking the silence. She asked about his experience in Kowloon so far. Hajime responded, sharing how wonderful it had been, though he admitted that he often felt a sense of nostalgia. He recalled something she had told him before. Nostalgia is like being in love. Hajime, curious, wondered why that comparison resonated with her. Reiko explained. She told him that nostalgia was a strange feeling. Though she had never truly been to Kowloon before, it felt as though she had known the place her entire life. That's the essence of nostalgia. It's the sensation of familiarity with something you've never experienced. It's like wanting to lock that feeling deep within your heart. In that way, it's much like love. Now back in the present, the clock reads 7:45. Riko stands by the mirror, applying soft pink lipstick as she prepares to leave for work. At the office, she immediately immerses herself in her tasks. Then she hears a familiar voice. She turns, expecting to see Hajime, but she is shocked to see who is also there, Miyuki, the unsettling doctor from Hebinuma Clinic. Their last encounter had left her uneasy. Their boss greets Miyuki with enthusiasm, but Reiko and Hajime exchange wary glances. The clinic has officially become a client, and Miyuki is now looking to establish a second location in Kowloon. They all gather together for tea, discussing Miyuki's plan to open another clinic in Kowloon. They set out to find a good location, but Hajime can't stop tapping his feet, his unease palpable. While Reiko searches for potential spots, Hajime notices how Miyuki keeps staring at her, making unnecessary remarks that only fuel his frustration. Unable to contain it any longer, Hajime leans in closer to Miyuki, his gaze intense, and confronts him. But Miyuki remains unfazed, continuing with his comments. As Hajime's irritation grows, he throws out a threat, but Miyuki retaliates by splashing sanitizer into Hajime's eyes. With this, Hajime screams in pain from the stinging burn. Miyuki, unfazed by the incident, decides to leave. He stands, bidding farewell, but not before grabbing Reiko's arm and pressing a kiss to her lips. His snake-like tongue slides into her mouth, and he whispers that she should choose him before pulling away. Hajime erupts in anger, shouting everything that comes to his mind. Miyuki and his assistant leave the scene, the assistant shocked by the kiss, given Miyuki's known germophobia. But, as Miyuki's behavior suggests, a snake swallows whatever it desires. Then Miyuki receives a call from someone named Yulong. Back at the office, Reiko remains frozen, stunned by what just occurred. Their boss steps in, trying to stop Hajime from pursuing Miyuki as Hajime's anger reaches a boiling point. After work, Hajime and Riko stop by a Japanese store. Riko spots a fish tank on display and instantly remembers she needs a larger one for her goldfish. But it's too heavy for her to carry, so Hajime offers to drop by her apartment so she can buy it. When they arrive at her apartment, it feels oddly familiar, as if Hajime has been there before. Riko does the same things she did when he first entered. Fill in the tank with water, while Hajime notices her toothpaste still lying around the sink in the same spot. The only difference is that there's no glass of tap water in the fridge like she used to keep. So instead, Hajime grabs a watermelon from the fridge. The room remains unchanged just as it was when he first visited, except for a plushie now displayed in one corner. Hajime steps out onto the veranda to smoke while his thoughts drift to the time Riko had smoked there when he first entered. Reiko brings up the topic of the room in Seijoing Tower, mentioning that she's found a tenant. Hajime approaches her while she is still busy with the fish tank and proceeds to ask the name of her fish. Without hesitation, the name Success comes to her mind. Hajime thinks it's a terrible name, but it's her fish after all. He walks out, glancing back one last time before leaving. Reiko is left there quietly, wishing he would visit again soon. The next day, a single stem of sunflower sits in a clear glass vase on Hajime's desk when he arrives. He glances at Reiko, who tells him it's her way of thanking him for carrying the fish tank yesterday. Though skeptical, Hajime asks when to change its water. He doesn't want the sunflower dying on him. Suddenly, a child's voice echoes through the office. It's Xiaowei visiting Reiko as promised. Though her issue with the noisy neighbor has been resolved, she now needs a bigger space to store all her clothes. She wants Riko's help with apartment viewings. Xiaowei notices the sunflower on Hajime's desk. She remarks that in flower language, a sunflower means, "I only have eyes for you." Reiko overhears and stiffens at this. She never really knew that was the meaning of it. In a slight panic, she grabs Xiaowei and pulls her out of the room before anything else can be said. They arrive at the 7th apartment they've viewed, but Xiaowei still doesn't connect with any of them. Reiko finds all of them acceptable, but Xiaowei remains unimpressed. Reiko proposes finding a place in another location, but moving out of Kowloon isn't an option for her. She only works part-time, so she technically has more choices, but she can't bring herself to leave Kowloon. Suddenly, Riko's phone rings. It's Hajime. He says he's found a good place on Nankang Street and tells them to come see it. Upon arriving, Reiko mentions that she had already visited that property but dismissed it due to its strange layout. She didn't even include it on Xiaowei's list. But once Xiaowei steps inside, she's instantly taken with it. Despite its small size, the apartment has plenty of storage and she falls in love with it. The rooftop adds to her excitement. She decides to take it on the spot. Reiko feels slightly defeated, but Hajime tells her that if a place fits the tenant, even an odd floor plan becomes the right one. While Xiaowei explores the rooftop, Reiko and Hajime look up at the sky, admiring the weather. Xiaowei calls them over to see something. The view below the rooftop is dotted with blooming sunflowers. It's as if someone scattered seeds there long ago, and now a cluster has started to grow. While looking at the site below, Reiko recalls the meaning of the sunflower in flower language. "I only have eyes for you." The thought lingers. She wanders in a field of gazes, whose eyes Hajime is hoping to find. The next day, Reiko buys watermelon juice at a store. A coin slips from her purse and rolls away. As she's about to retrieve it, a strange man wearing a mask picks it up and plays with it in his hands before giving it back to her. What makes him more strange is that he says nothing. He only bows in response to her thanks and walks away in silence. That same night, news spreads all over the town. It's a newspaper article that reveals Miyuki is not the legitimate child of the company president. It's the son of a mistress who took over the company because the rightful heir and his mother died in a car accident years ago. Even the housekeepers can't stop talking about it. Meanwhile, Miyuki sits on a bed, sharing it with the masked man from earlier. Though the article is mentioned, Miyuki doesn't seem to care. The masked man seems to know a lot of information as he mentions how Reiko is so identical to another person and even brings up Tao, who quit his job 2 weeks ago. Miyuki stands as well, walking over to the window to gaze at the view. He dials a number. When the call connects, he asks for updates. He's investigating Reiko's identity. There's nothing yet, but he trusts the man on the other end. He slips off his robe, revealing a body marked by a large, winding snake tattoo that coils across his skin. The next day, Hajime walks through the streets of Kowloon with a photo of Tao in hand, asking people around who might have worked with him if they've ever seen the man. Someone suggests he try visiting Tao directly or ask his neighbors. After all, he's a real estate agent. But every attempt leads nowhere. When he tries to walk and go to Tao's apartment, the path folds into a dead end. The roads going there are gone, erased as if they never existed. It's as if Kowloon is doing something strange to trick him. Elsewhere, Reiko smokes alone on the veranda, watching the view with her cigarette in hand. Suddenly, the masked man from yesterday appears beside her once again. She turns toward him, startled not by his presence, but by what follows. He removes his mask, and she recognizes him as the bartender in the Goldfish Tea House, Tao. His hair is loose, no bun like before, but everything else matches. His face, his eyes, his presence. He seems surprised she knows him, but Reiko has always felt he knew her. Even though they met only twice, she senses a long-standing connection. He confirms it, acknowledging her bond with Hajime too. But then he tells her something bizarre. He knows that she is not the Reiko he once knew. The real Reiko, he says, no longer exists in this world. She listens in silence as he explains. Everything about her is identical to the woman in the photograph, even the beauty mark near her eye. But it's not her at all. She is someone else in Reiko's body, unaware of living a life not her own. He pities her, then tells her to relay a message to Hajime that he will visit him soon, before leaving her there confused by his words. Reiko walks back to the office, Tao's words echoing in her mind. If she is not the woman in the photo, then this life, this past, all belong to someone else. Inside, Hajime sits slumped at his desk, his head resting in his arms. On his table, the sunflower she once gave him stands wilted in a dry vase. She picks it up, intending to throw it away. Before she can leave, Hajime mutters he doesn't like her. But she shrugs it off, saying he already knows that, then she proceeds to drop the dead flower into the trash. That night, Reiko sits awake on her bed, replaying Tao's words. If everything she is now isn't truly hers, then Hajime's affection and their shared history, none of it really belongs to her. It all belongs to the original Reiko. The next day, they work in quiet routine. In the afternoon, they begin burning old papers. Reiko keeps spilling the trash onto the floor, missing the furnace. Hajime comments on her worsening vision, suggesting she wear her glasses again, but she refuses. Later, she brings up the woman, the real Reiko, and asks if she is the same person Hajime remembers. A sudden gust of wind lashes across her face. Hajime answers indirectly, but the meaning is clear. She doesn't even know herself. It's true. She has no memory of how long she's lived in Kowloon, when she started working, or even how she speaks. Everything feels borrowed, as if they all belong to someone else. Yet there are still some things that truly belong to her. Her goldfish, the fondness for lemon chicken, and the way she loves Hajime. But Hajime denies it. To him, her love is just part of the illusion, an echo of the life she is living. Reiko knows otherwise. Everything she feels is real. She explains with tears in her eyes how deeply she aches for his touch and how she longs for his acknowledgement. Hajime stares, speechless. She tries to express the depth of that ache, but the words catch in her throat. Her chest tightens, her breath shortens, and a world spins. Then, overcome by it all, she collapses to the ground. The scene opens to a flashback of Hajime and the real Reiko drinking together at their regular spot in Kowloon. They are celebrating Hajime's welcome party with shelled shrimps and some alcohol. Over drinks, Hajime brings up the topic of Kowloon being demolished soon. However, this isn't the first time it has happened. Back in 1944, the original Kowloon had already been torn down. What stands now is the second Kowloon walled city, recreated illegally, most likely because the people long to relive the nostalgia and chaotic comfort that the real Kowloon once offered. After finishing their meal, they head home. Reiko, already quite drunk, walks in zigzags while Hajime does his best to assist her. Despite her condition, she insists on going for more drinks, but Hajime gently refuses. Then suddenly, the strap of Reiko's bra slips down her shoulder, making Hajime visibly uneasy. He quickly averts his gaze, determined not to act inappropriately. But Reiko, without hesitation, grabs him by the tie and pulls him into a deep, passionate kiss. Hajime freezes, his face turning a bright red from a mixture of shock, shame, and bliss. Still, after hesitating, he gently holds Reiko by the shoulders and presses another kiss onto her lips, this time deeper and fully consensual. Back in the present, Reiko wakes up in an unfamiliar place. She panics for a moment before realizing she's in Hajime's apartment. She finds herself resting in Hajime's bed while Hajime sleeps in a chair beside it. Hajime stirs awake, recalling how Reiko collapsed on the rooftop yesterday. Since then, she had been sleeping soundly like a log. As Reiko slowly sits up, Hajime brings up the question she asked before fainting, the one about the real Reiko. Her eyes widen when he mentions it, sensing he is about to reveal something important. But before he can say a word, a quiet voice inside her warns her to stop him, and she refuses to hear it. Hajime rises from his seat, preparing to leave for work. He advises Reiko to head home and get some proper rest, but she quickly realizes she has lost her keys. To her surprise, Hajime casually hands her a spare key to her apartment. Reiko is puzzled. Why does Hajime have a copy of her key? However, she quickly pushes the thought aside. She no longer wants to dig into the real Reiko's past. Accepting the key, without further questions, she listens as Hajime reminds her to lock the door after she leaves. Meanwhile, Miyuki and Tao stroll through the winding streets of Kowloon. Both are dressed unusually, wearing different hairstyles, odd accessories, and unfamiliar clothes to stay unrecognizable among the crowd. Tao warns Miyuki not to wander around Kowloon alone. He might accidentally encounter the fake Tao and find himself drawn to him. Miyuki smirks, wondering aloud if the fake Tao would also find him attractive. After all, the fake Reiko has fallen for Hajime. They head to the Goldfish Tea House where Tao once worked. Since they can't check inside, they decide to investigate the back door. To Tao's surprise, the shelter he built for stray cats is gone, completely erased, as if the Kowloon he once knew no longer exists. It feels strange and unsettling. While looking around, Tao also picks up an eye drop bottle from Hebenham Pharmaceutical. Although the product was released 3 years ago, it is being sold in Kowloon as if it were brand new. Miyuki, however, isn't surprised. He points out that Kowloon often faces logistical oddities, so selling old products as new ones isn't anything unusual here. Still, Tao feels uneasy. Everything seems shabbier. He then brings up another detail. Reiko's mole under her eye looks exactly like the real Reiko's. This catches Miyuki's full attention. His eyes widen at the revelation. Moles and unique beauty marks typically aren't replicated when creating a clone, meaning there could be something deeper at play. Miyuki begins to think about how eerily similar she is. The same face, the same voice, even the same warmth. She even loves Hajime the way the real Reiko did. Despite having no memory of that love, she still loves him instinctively. Reiko sits in her room laughing heartily with Yaomei while eating lemon chicken. They enjoy each other's company. Yaomei talks about how she recommended Xiaohei for a new job as a seamstress, a role that suits her perfectly. Amid the lighthearted conversation, Yaomei suddenly comments on how Reiko seems to be glowing lately. Instead of answering directly, Reiko reveals something she recently learned. She isn't the Reiko in the old photograph. The real Reiko had already died. Upon hearing this, Yaomei panics, realizing they could be hanging out in a dead person's room. Reiko also mentions how Hajime seems to know the full story about the real Reiko, but she has chosen not to ask him. A voice inside her warned her not to dig too deep. She fears that if she learns the truth, she herself might disappear. Instead, Reiko decides she will simply live as herself. She doesn't need the past to define who she is now. She trusts her own choices and is determined to take ownership of her life, free from the shadows of her unknown past. Yaomei smiles at Reiko's response, happy to hear her confidence, but she still finds it strange, being identical to someone else and having no memories of a past life. Reiko then shares what Miyuki once told her at the hospital. Her wrinkles looked natural, as if they had always been there. In her room felt like it had existed forever. She doesn't remember moving in, but she remembers her belongings. It's as if she was simply placed there to continue living the real Reiko's life like a clone. That's when Yaomei reveals something she found during her internet research. She came across a deleted post mentioning a secret research in connection with the Gene Terra project, which allegedly aimed to create clones. Although the post was erased, Yaomei can't help but wonder if there's truth to it, especially given everything happening to Reiko now. The project is called Zirconian, named after the gemstone zirconia, a fake diamond. Hearing this, Yaomei shows Reiko the zirconia earrings she's wearing. Reiko's heart sinks. If she was truly created to be a fake, she longs to be something real. Yaomei then stands up and tells Reiko to turn off the lights. In the dark, she holds up her zirconia earring. It gleams brightly, almost like a real diamond. Though it isn't genuine, Yaomei says she treasures it deeply. She shares her own story, how, after countless plastic surgeries, some might see her as fake too. But just like zirconia, even something not considered real can shine beautifully. Reiko listens closely, feeling comforted. Even if some people only see fakes as fakes, there are always those who recognize and cherish the light they carry. The next day, Reiko returns to work and is greeted by Hajime, who shows up late once again. At lunch, Hajime walks through a secluded alley when he hears Reiko and Yaomei's voices approaching. Instinctively, he hides without knowing why. As he listens, he hears them planning a small get-together with Yaomei suggesting that Reiko invite Hajime as well. The topic then shifts. Yaomei encourages Reiko to move to a new room, throw away all her old belongings and start fresh, living as her true self, not just as a replacement for the real Reiko. But Reiko refuses. She wants to keep the things not for Hajime's sake, but for the real Reiko's. Even though the original Reiko no longer exists, her belongings keep a part of her alive. If they were thrown away, it would feel like erasing her completely from the world. Hajime stands on the rooftop, smoking a cigarette as he gazes at the view when Reiko arrives. She approaches him and invites him to Xiaohei's welcome party. However, Hajime declines, suggesting that Reiko, Yaomei, and Xiaohei enjoy themselves without him. Despite turning down the invitation, Hajime casually pulls out a handful of cash from his pocket and offers it as his contribution to the party. Reiko stares at the amount in disbelief, amazed at how much he's willing to spend. Still, she feels happy knowing they can splurge and celebrate properly, thanks to Hajime's unexpected donation. Remembering her shift, Reiko leaves in a rush. Hajime follows after a while, waiting for the right moment. Reiko pauses by the door, waiting for Hajime to knock before she leaves completely. Hajime approaches, and for a moment, they are face to face with only the door separating them. As he raises his hand to knock, he hesitates. Memories of the real Reiko haunt him. He imagines her still on the rooftop, smoking her cigarette while gazing at the distant view. That afternoon, Yaomei continues working but can't brush off Reiko's words. Reiko still refuses to move or throw away the real Reiko's belongings. To Yaomei, it feels wrong, like Reiko is still trying to live someone else's life instead of building her own. As evening falls, they gather on Xiaohei's rooftop to celebrate her housewarming party. Although Hajime had initially declined their invitation, he still shows up, claiming that Xiaohei forced him to come. The atmosphere is lively as they start eating, and Yaomei prepares a plate for Hajime, an unbalanced mix of 1/3 chicken and 2/3 lemon, drawing laughter from the group. Returning to their discussion about finding a new place, Yaomei suggests a location where Reiko could move. However, Reiko remains firm about staying in her current apartment. Yaomei insists, trying to convince her otherwise, but Reiko doesn't budge. Hoping for backup, Yaomei turns to Hajime for his opinion. Hajime simply says that if Reiko wants to move out, then she should. Hearing this, Reiko insists she doesn't hate that place at all, so she will not move out. At the end of the party, Xiaohei and Yaomei are tasked with fixing the chairs and tables, while Reiko is accompanied by Hajime to throw out the trash. After burning the garbage in the furnace, they decide to take a cigarette break on the rooftop. They gaze at the night view, the full moon glowing brightly above them. In the distance, a billboard for Hebinuma Pharmaceutical catches their attention. Reiko brings up the topic of Miyuki, mentioning the second clinic he wanted to build in Kowloon. After their meeting at the office, Miyuki never returned. As Reiko talks, Hajime remembers the kiss Miyuki once stole from her, and a dark emotion stirs inside him. Reiko's heart pounds under the moonlight. She wonders if he is about to kiss her. However, Hajime simply exhales a cloud of cigarette smoke between them. Pulling back slightly, he remarks coolly that she leaves herself too open, leaving Reiko both annoyed and flustered. Hajime turns to face the moon. Beneath it, the generic Terra also gleams brightly. He wonders aloud what kind of light reflects to shine so brilliantly. Reiko answers that it's the high hopes people place on generic Terra that make it shine. After they finish, Hajime heads home, wandering through the dim alleyways with his head bowed and softly humming a tune. His aura seems darker than before. As he walks, he recalls Reiko's words about high hopes and lets out a dry, bitter laugh that quickly fades. Something is definitely wrong with Kowloon. The next day, Hajime plays mahjong with the elders in Kowloon when Reiko suddenly appears behind him. The elders greet her warmly, but Hajime is surprised. Reiko usually has lunch with Yaomei. However, since Yaomei is off today, Reiko decides to join him for dumplings instead. As they chat, Reiko notices Mr. Chan's absence. Mr. Chan is actually at Hebinuma Medical Center that day. He is summoned by Miyuki for a checkup, though he insisted he is fine. During her consultation, Miyuki receives a phone call about bringing someone to Kowloon. Miyuki quickly tells the person on the phone to escort the newcomer back to his home. As Miyuki glances back at Mr. Chan, he is taken back to find the chair now empty. He proceeds to tell Tao. The situation continues to unfold with unexpected twists. That afternoon, Riko and Hajime work as usual, focused on their tasks. Meanwhile, Miyuki speaks with Tao, expressing his satisfaction that the second version of himself no longer exists. This news brings him great happiness. They continue their conversation, discussing matters like finding Mr. Chan and contacting a realty in Japan about Hajime, which brings Tao's attention back to him. Finally, Miyuki asks Tao about the real Reiko's cause of death, shifting the conversation to darker topics. After work, Hajime and Reiko close up the office and walk home together. Reiko can't shake off the concern about Mr. Chan's absence earlier. He's an elderly man living alone, which worries her. Hajime jokes about how easily people die, laughing about it, but his words unsettle Reiko. On the other hand, Tao refuses to answer Miyuki's question directly, claiming that both he and Hajime always thought it was some kind of mistake. Hajime asks Reiko how much she knows, and she tells him that the only thing she is certain of is that the real Reiko no longer exists. It's what Tao had told her when they met once. Hajime is shocked to hear about Tao, but he simply laughs it off. Meanwhile, Miyuki begins to understand why Tao seems to harbor such disdain for the fake Reiko, and why he is so protective of Hajime. Hajime, laughing hysterically in front of Reiko, suddenly stops. After a moment of silence, he spills the truth. He is the one who killed the real Reiko. Hajime tells Reiko that he killed the real Reiko. When he turns to face her, his expression is one she can barely recognize. Reiko freezes, stunned by what seems like a confession to murder. But Hajime is only fooling around, curious to see how she would react. Despite Reiko's visible discomfort, he laughs it off, treating it as a harmless joke. Still, he does confirm that the real Reiko no longer exists in this world. That much, at least, he says with certainty. Reiko believes that means he doesn't want to forget her, but Hajime only shrugs and urges her to walk home, leaving the conversation behind. That day, Reiko visits Yaomei for tea and shares the strange encounter. She repeats Hajime's joke, expecting confusion or amusement. Instead, Yaomei narrows her brows, eyes darkening with suspicion. To her, Hajime is not joking. He is, in fact, the real Reiko's killer. Reiko is stunned. The idea of Hajime murdering his own fiancée seems impossible. But Yaomei is convinced. Love and hate, she says, are two sides of the same coin. Yaomei explains that people often wear appearances that don't reflect who they truly are, especially in a place like Kowloon. That's why she believes Hajime is the real culprit behind the real Reiko's death. To her, his joke is simply a mask, a way to bury the truth in plain sight. But no matter what Yaomei says, Reiko refuses to believe it. She's convinced Hajime isn't that kind of person. She recalls the strange expression he wore during their conversation, unfamiliar yet oddly familiar at the same time. She remembers seeing that very look once before, back when he saw the earrings she wore to work. It was something he rarely let anyone see. Reiko wonders if she might be the only one who's ever seen that side of him. She doesn't know if that's something to be happy about or if it should scare her. All she knows is that she wants to understand him more, perhaps even more than the real Reiko ever did. When Reiko wakes up the next morning, her eyes land directly on the books lined up on her shelf. Books that once belonged to the real Reiko, and ones she never bothered to read. Curiosity nudges her closer, and when she inspects them more closely, she notices they're all mystery novels. She picks one up, opens it, and is instantly drawn into the story. As she reads, a strange feeling washes over her. In her subconscious mind, she catches fleeting glimpses of herself and Hajime. A sudden beep from her phone pulls her back to reality. She checks it and sees a message from Yaomei, saying she's on her way to visit. Reiko decides to return the book to its place, but as she's about to slide it back onto the shelf, something else catches her eye. Tucked in the corner is a diamond ring. It sparkles with brilliance too real to ignore. She picks it up, examining it closely before setting it gently on her desk. Just as she does, the ground suddenly trembles beneath her. An earthquake begins to shake the room. The next morning, Reiko arrives at work with dark circles under her eyes. Strangely enough, Hajime shows up looking the same. As if in sync, both seem to have had a restless night, though for different reasons. Hajime struggles with insomnia recently, while Reiko stayed up late reading one of the real Reiko's books. Unfortunately, she only has the first volume and is eager to finish the series, so she asks Hajime to take her to a bookstore that might have the rest. After work, Hajime agrees to bring her and Yaomei tags along, still visibly uneasy around him. The bookstore is located in an area with faulty plumbing, so they bring an umbrella just in case. True enough, the path there is a soaked and slippery mess, leading Reiko and Yaomei to squeal the whole way. Once they arrive at the bookstore, they're surprised to find Xiaowei working there. She cheerfully points them toward the section where Reiko can find the books she's looking for. Reiko eagerly pulls out the next volume in the mystery series, but upon opening it, she realizes it's a misprint. The letters are scattered, making the text unreadable. Disappointed, she returns it to the shelf, but another book catches her eye. Titled How to See the World, it's filled with stunning images of beautiful places from around the globe. The travel book stirs something in Hajime, a memory of the real Reiko. She had no interest in seeing the world beyond Kowloon. Because of that, he discourages Reiko from buying the book. But with Yaomei's persistent interference and encouragement, he reluctantly backs off, unable to stop her. After their book shopping, Yaomei and Reiko eat together at a cafe. Reiko feels disappointed that she couldn't get the second volume. She's completely hooked on the story now. However, Yaomei isn't too pleased that Reiko is reading the real Reiko's books, calling it odd since she's supposed to be her rival. Reiko calmly explains that she simply wants to understand her better. Yaomei raises an eyebrow, thinking it sounds a little greedy. But Reiko defends herself, saying that life is all about wanting more. Meanwhile, at their mansion, Miyuki bids farewell to Tao as he rides the elevator up. Left behind with the maids, Tao listens as they chat about how much Miyuki has changed since Tao arrived, becoming noticeably friendlier, which fills Tao with quiet pride. That day, Miyuki appears on a television segment focused on the results of his beauty treatments. The show highlights clients who want to undergo medical procedures in order to enhance their appearance and become a better version of themselves. The projected improvements are impressive, and the clients express their satisfaction. However, Miyuki takes a thoughtful turn during the interview. He emphasizes that plastic surgery isn't always the solution. True transformation, he says, comes from within. The heart can create wonders that no treatment ever could. Sometimes, all it takes to brighten a dull expression is a genuine smile. However, the man seated beside Miyuki, introduced as Sean, takes his advice the wrong way. He claims Miyuki can only speak so lightly because everything was handed to him at birth, including the company inherited from his father. Miyuki does not take the comment kindly. When Sean continues, calling second-generation heirs nothing more than generic copies of their predecessors, Miyuki subtly kicks the leg of Sean's seat, causing him to stumble and fall. The sudden commotion shocks the studio. As tension builds, Miyuki remarks that while some things may be handed down, other things are taken away because of it. But before he can elaborate, the flustered anchor cuts him off, quickly announcing a commercial break to ease the growing tension. Teo, watching the broadcast with the maids, begins to question whether Miyuki truly has become friendlier. Meanwhile, at the cafe, Reiko, Hajime, and Yaomei react with the same stunned expression as everyone else. Yaomei agrees with Miyuki's words, claiming that once you begin living a life handed down to you, you'll eventually lose something, which is your sense of self. Reiko assumes she's referring to her and the real Reiko, so she quickly changes the subject and suggests they leave. Just as they're about to go, Woon approaches and hands them a flyer for a play titled The Butterfly Dream. Upon seeing it, Yaomei nearly tears up. The woman featured on the poster is a famous national actress, and the sight alone stirs something in her. Reiko appears interested in the performance and invites Yaomei to watch it with her. However, Yaomei declines, unease and quiet disdain clouding her expression. Reiko ends up watching The Butterfly Dream alone. After the show, she meets up with Yaomei in a fabric store and eagerly recounts the story. How captivating the plot was, how stunning and talented the lead actress appeared. But Yaomei doesn't seem to be listening. Her eyes wander and her expression is distant. Reiko, unaware, continues talking, saying how much Yaomei would have liked the performance. Then, without warning, Yaomei snaps. All the emotions she's been holding in burst to the surface. She accuses Reiko of being too obsessed with uncovering the real Reiko's life, of chasing after answers without understanding the risks. She says Reiko is carefree because she has no past to hide, unlike her. Yaomei's voice trembles. Everything seems to unsettle her. All this time she's been scared, and Reiko, no matter how hard she tries, can never truly understand. Without another word, Yaomei turns and walks away, leaving Reiko standing there stunned and confused. Yaomei threw her past life behind and started anew, but no matter how far she runs, it keeps finding its way back. As she arrives home and faces the mirror, her reflection catches her eye, a version of herself she no longer recognizes, yet still fears. The reason she reacted so coldly when Reiko mentioned the butterfly dream is because the lead actress is her mother, a woman who controlled every detail of Yaomei's life, her appearance, her clothes, and even her very accessories. The play and the poster triggered memories she tried so hard to forget. Although Yaomei doesn't always agree with her mother's choices, she's often left with no choice but to go along with them. People constantly tell her how much she resembles her mother, that she's just as beautiful. But beneath the surface, Yaomei feels something else entirely. No matter how pretty others say she is, it's as if her freedom, her sense of self, is slowly being taken away. Reiko keeps texting Yaomei until the next day, but receives no reply. While walking alone, she passes by a shop selling zirconia earrings and suddenly remembers something Yaomei once told her, to be herself and nothing else. Whether real or fake, genuine or not, what matters most is being true to who you are. Only then does Reiko begin to understand what Yaomei meant yesterday. She herself only lives in the present and has no past to carry, which is why she can't fully grasp what Yaomei is feeling. Later that day, Reiko has lunch with Hajime. She tries to explain everything to him, questioning what she could possibly offer someone like Yaomei when she's never experienced the same kind of loss or burden. Hajime, noticing how deeply Reiko wants to help but clearly can't relate, gives her a simple suggestion: stop wondering and just simply talk to her. Reiko wastes no time and visits Yaomei right after work, carrying a box of egg tarts, Yaomei's comfort food. However, Yaomei, still feeling unlike herself, refuses to open the door. From behind it, she tells Reiko to leave. But before Reiko can respond, Yaomei asks her a question. How would she describe her? Without hesitation, Reiko replies that the Yaomei she knows is lively, confident, and proud with a clear sense of self. But Yaomei argues that those traits are nothing but lies. She claims the real her is insecure, a coward, and a people pleaser. What Reiko sees now is a mask, a version she made up to hide her past. Riko, however, gently disagrees. She reminds Yome of everything she's said before, everything she's done. If she's working hard to become someone better, someone she truly wants to be, then that version of herself isn't fake, it's real. She's turning who she wants to be into who she truly is, and that effort makes it genuine, not a lie. Although Reiko doesn't fully understand what it means to carry a heavy past, she knows one thing for sure. She, too, holds an ideal version of herself. There's something powerful in the idea of becoming her absolute self, and even if it feels fake, it still makes her shine in a way that feels real, just like Zirconia. On the other side of the door, Yome listens in silence. Riko's words sink in. Then, without warning, Yome throws open the door and runs into Reiko's arms, embracing her tightly. Tears fall from her eyes as she tells her it's all true and not a lie. She declares that from now on, she'll live as her absolute self, too. The two head to a nearby shop to browse jewelry. Yome quickly spots a peach she likes and holds it up with a small smile. As Reiko waits, her eyes wander, then she sees Hajime standing outside. She gazes at him intently, her heart steady. She tells herself it's him that she wants. Elsewhere, Miyuki sits quietly in the backseat of his car, watching the city pass by. His ride is interrupted by a sudden call. It's from his father. The voice on the other end is sharp, asking about the incident on television earlier. That night, Hajime dreams of the first time he brought the real Reiko to the Goldfish Tea House. She was the one who taught him about smoking after eating a watermelon. They chatted casually about random things for a while until she stood up, smiling, and left for work. Tao, who had been watching them from a corner, later remarked how they seemed genuinely interested in each other. Hajime, who once disliked Kowloon, slowly found himself warming to it. Tao even tells him that maybe Hajime has fallen in love with Kowloon. Suddenly, Hajime bolts awake, drenched in sweat. His heart pounds as the memory slips away like smoke. With a guttural scream, he clutches his head in frustration. At that very moment, the ground begins to rumble. Another earthquake strikes Kowloon, leaving the entire city rattled and afraid. Meanwhile, Tao, riding a cab, tells the driver he wants to go to Kowloon. He warns him that the place has nothing. Still, Tao does not change his mind at all. He walks in, entering the place without a hint of hesitation, even if the surroundings seem pretty odd and the place seems rather desolate. That day, Miyuki is called into his father's office and immediately scolded for his behavior during the recent TV appearance. His father calls him vulgar, saying he's not worthy of carrying the Ebinuma name. Miyuki tries to explain himself, but his father doesn't listen. He tells Miyuki to come closer, and Miyuki obeys, kneeling in front of him. Their conversation shifts to the Zirconian project, which Miyuki is developing under Jean Terra. When Miyuki says the project isn't ready yet, his father warns him that failure won't be tolerated. Then he brings up their ongoing experiments with clone production and casually mentions a new pet dog, leaving Miyuki unsettled. Later, when Miyuki returns home, Tao greets him warmly and opens his arms for a hug. But Miyuki, visibly drained, simply rests his head on Tao's shoulder. Tao understands. He knows what kind of pressure Miyuki faces whenever he visits his father. That night, the two of them lie in bed together, naked and embracing each other. The next morning, Tao wakes to an unsettling surprise. Maids stand by the door, his belongings already packed neatly into bags and luggage. Confused and alarmed, he rushes to the rooftop, where he finds Miyuki in the middle of a phone call. Miyuki tries to offer him a check, but the gesture only ignites Tao's anger. He snatches the phone from Miyuki's hand and hurls it to the ground. Tao knows Miyuki wouldn't act like this on his own, so he suspects his father said something. Miyuki, however, denies it coldly, claiming it's none of Tao's concern. Still, Tao doesn't give up. He tries to reach him to remind him that revenge is not something worth living for. But in the end, he accepts that it's Miyuki's life and only he can decide what path to take. Tao just hopes that decision isn't one shaped by revenge. Tao, overwhelmed with fury and desperation, grabs Miyuki by the arm and pulls him close. He urges him to choose him instead. He promises to follow Miyuki anywhere, no matter what. But Miyuki tells him not to make such a promise, because if he does, he'll never be free to go anywhere again. Tao refuses to listen. Instead, he crashes his lips onto Miyuki's in an aggressive, almost punishing kiss. When he finally pulls away, Miyuki's lips are bleeding. Miyuki tells him to leave and Tao obeys. But just before walking out the door, he turns back to say the words that have been swelling inside him. He loves him. Later, Tao lies on the bed of his small, old apartment, haunted by Miyuki's words. His mind drifts to the past, to his days at the Goldfish Tea House. He recalls seeing Hajime and the real Reiko sitting together. Hajime offers Reiko a goldfish, but she refuses, saying that keeping one means she can never go anywhere freely again. That moment, quiet yet vivid, now echoes with new weight in Tao's heart. Hajime also pulls out a book Reiko likes, but she declines the second volume. She says the first part was so good that reading the sequel might ruin it. If it turns out boring, she'd rather not know. The real Reiko never wanted to change anything about her world. She clung to what was already beautiful, afraid of the regret that might come with change. Hajime, in contrast, was always willing to take a chance, never really stopping to think about what he could lose. Tao sits nearby, silently observing their playful banter. His eyes drift to the corner of the table, where a newspaper lies open. One headline catches his attention. Kowloon is set to be demolished. Hajime casually mentions he's waiting for his company's decision, whether to return to Japan or transfer to Hong Kong. Tao says he's already decided. He's going to Hong Kong. After that conversation, Hajime suddenly remembers he has a meeting with Xiaohei, who is considering setting up a place in Kowloon. With a quick apology, he excuses himself, leaving Reiko and Tao behind in the tea house. Reiko notices the book that Hajime intended to give her lying on the table. She makes no move to pick it up. In her mind, some stories are better left unfinished, neither concluded nor continued. Back in the present, a package arrives at Yaome's apartment. When she opens the door, she's greeted by the delivery guy, Tao. The moment she lays eyes on him, she notices how hot he is. Wasting no time, she boldly asks for his name. Tao, momentarily stunned by her directness, blurts out his real name before he can stop himself. As Yome begins to introduce herself, a memory surfaces, something Riko once mentioned. She described a server from the Goldfish Tea House. The description clicks in Yome's mind, and she quickly follows up with a question. His confirmation seals her suspicion. At a quiet cafe, the three sit together to catch up. Reiko brings up the reason she sought Tao out. She's been looking for him. Calmly, she asks about the real Reiko. Tao doesn't dodge the question. He confirms there were two Reikos, and the one before him is merely a copy. He admits he got another version of himself too, but that version no longer exists, erased, because he was never real. Yome, sitting beside Reiko, is rattled. Reiko is here too. Does that mean she's the original? But Tao's story is different from hers. Maybe because the real Reiko is already dead. Tao pauses for a while when Reiko reveals what she knows. She tells him that Hajime said he killed the real Reiko. Tao denies that Hajime killed the real Reiko. He explains that they were once engaged. Yome presses him further, eager to know how the real Reiko died, but Tao refuses to answer. He worries that if Reiko learns the truth, she could end up in the same dangerous situation. After all, she already has feelings for Hajime, just like the real Reiko did. Reiko, however, is firm in her conviction that her feelings are genuine. Hers alone, not something she's trying to imitate. She reassures Tao that she is truly herself. Tao hesitates for a moment, then admits she doesn't resemble the original Reiko he knew. This version of her seems to be real. Their conversation is cut short when Reiko notices the time. She has to return to work. Before rushing off, she urges Tao to meet her again. Yaomei, however, insists on talking more with Tao. Yaomei enjoys the food at the cafe while Tao watches her visibly stunned. He doesn't recognize her from Kowloon, but Yaomei casually explains she's only been in Kowloon for 6 months and didn't know the place before. Tao grows concerned and warns her that Kowloon is a dangerous place. He asks if she's ever felt anything strange about herself. Yaomei pauses before explaining that she hasn't always looked this way. A few days ago, she became certain she had changed back into her former self. This wasn't a hallucination or anything. It had to do with being one's absolute self and truly owning everything your heart desires. She explains that lying to yourself creates a false version of who you are. As she speaks, he recalls Miyuki's situation. Yaomei asks Tao about the second version of people, wondering if Hajime could be a fake. She senses something off about him and urges Tao to figure it out. Tao agrees as he plans to see Hajime later, but deep down he knows Hajime is real. After all, who else would do something so cruel if not the real Hajime? Reiko prepares a cup of instant noodles when Miyuki's interview appears on the television. He's discussing memory storage in Gene Terra while she focuses on cooling her noodles. Suddenly, Hajime storms in, scolding her for eating the noodles he had set aside. Reiko explains she skipped lunch and Hajime, noticing the crow's feet on her face, points them out. Reiko simply replies that it's a sign of life, proof that she's alive. Hajime falls silent, then leaves with a reminder to restock the noodles. Reiko insists they buy some together the next day. Left alone, she reflects on what she just said. The things she enjoys, food, friends, are starting to define her. They feel like her own. She's finally becoming herself. Yet thoughts of Hajime linger. He lost his fiancée and clings to nostalgia. He avoids change. Still, he continues working beside her, someone who looks just like the woman he lost. Reiko wonders what it must feel like to be in his shoes. Miyuki visits Dr. Wong for a private consultation. He asks if he can get pregnant, but Dr. Wong explains that although Miyuki possesses both male and female genitalia, he has no functional reproductive system. Not even in vitro fertilization would work. Dr. Wong suspects his question relates to the Gene Terra project, which he has long opposed. Before their conversation deepens, they're interrupted by Yulong, who casually joins them after waking up from a nap. The three briefly discuss Gene Terra, with Dr. Wong voicing his continued disapproval of the project's aim. Miyuki, however, cuts him off and asks to speak to Yulong in private. In a quiet inn room, Miyuki opens up. He shares that his father wants to use Gene Terra to resurrect his deceased son. Miyuki has no intention of helping him. Instead, he wants to restore everything, his face, voice, even warmth, but deliberately exclude the memories. He wants to give his father hope, only to shatter it completely. Yulong remarks on Miyuki's twisted nature, but since it entertains him, he chooses not to interfere. The idea Miyuki proposes isn't entirely impossible after all. Many dead people in Kowloon continue to live their lives as if nothing changed. They're called Zirconians. But Miyuki isn't just interested in the people. He wants to know how the replicated second-walled city of Kowloon, which once vanished, was recreated. Yulong agrees to discuss it, admitting that some people conceive restored Kowloon while others cannot. He himself loved that place, but it no longer appears to him. Miyuki, however, still sees it. Yulong finds it unfair that even though he and Miyuki both grew up in Kowloon, only Miyuki can still see it. There must be a condition that determines who can see the restored city. He rules out the length of residency. After all, even Tao, who didn't live long in Kowloon, can still see it. Tao lived through the destruction of the second Kowloon and remembers the old one as being different from the new. As Yulong thinks about it, he brings up a celebrity known to be living in Kowloon. He pulls up her image on the screen. It's Yao Mei. Though her face has undergone extensive plastic surgery, she remains a real living person. They both wonder what someone like Yao Mei is doing in a place like Kowloon. They talk about Yao Mei's life, how she vanished from the public eye despite being a sheltered figure. It suggests she likely didn't even know about Kowloon before. If someone with no past connection to the city can still see it, then prior knowledge isn't a requirement. Yulong thinks it over and suggests that Hong Kong naturally draws in strong personalities and Kowloon's influence is far-reaching. Placing something as powerful as the Gene Terra project directly above Hong Kong could disrupt a natural balance. Miyuki compares the phenomenon to Feng Shui, calling it superstition, but Yulong disagrees, arguing Feng Shui is scientific and how it helps people shape their lives. He hypothesizes that Gene Terra resonated with something unknown, causing the illusion of the second Kowloon, visible only to those who match that resonance. Since the exact trigger is unclear, they must consider all possibilities. Yulong tells Miyuki that people often see what they want to see. His Gene Terra pitch exploits that idea. Maybe Kowloon works the same way, but that theory fails too. Yulong, who longs to see it, can't, while someone like Yao Mei, with no past ties to Kowloon, can. That's all they know for now. Kowloon isn't the common denominator. It only appears when a person resonates with something, but what that is remains unknown. With that, Miyuki stands and leaves, resolved to handle things on his own. Yulong walks him to the staircase and says goodbye, advising him to watch for anything unnatural, as it might offer clues. As Miyuki disappears down the stairs, Yulong stays behind, quietly hoping he keeps his guard up too, not to be swallowed up by Kowloon. The next morning, Hajime and Reiko go out to buy cup noodles. As they walk, Reiko shares a story about her lunch with Yao Mei, where they tried an international dish. She muses about visiting its country of origin for the authentic taste, but Hajime suggests trying cup noodles inspired by different countries instead. Reiko brushes it off, suspecting they're all made in Japan anyway. Frustrated, she walks away to buy detergent. Along the way, she spots a travel guidebook, picks it up, and admires the places inside. Just then, Hajime appears behind her, noting her eagerness to leave Kowloon. Reiko has only ever known life in Kowloon, but she dreams of exploring the world, maybe even moving somewhere new. But more than that, she believes leaving would be better for Hajime. Sharing the same face as his deceased fiancé, she worries her presence might keep him from healing. But Hajime steps closer, gently grips her shoulders, and tells her not to go. He wants her to stay with him always. Their moment is suddenly shattered by a loud explosion and the ground trembling beneath them. The grocery stacks begin falling and they rush outside to see thick black smoke billowing from Saihing Tower. Hajime immediately runs toward the chaos to investigate, instructing Reiko to return to the office with their things. When Hajime decides to propose to the real Reiko, the first person he talks to is Tao. They sit together at a small table in a quiet store. Hajime brings up the topic, admitting that the proposal comes earlier than planned because Kowloon is said to disappear soon. Tao responds by asking if Hajime truly knows Reiko, prompting a moment of reflection. Hajime realizes he might be rushing, but Tao clarifies he never meant to cast doubt. Hajime acknowledges it is too soon, but knowing how much Reiko loves Kowloon, he wants her to have the best memories while the city still stands. Even if she is already happy, he wants to give her something unforgettable. Tao, hearing his sincerity, supports the decision, thinking it is a meaningful gesture. Now in the present, Hajime surveys the burned tower where the explosion occurred. The structure is charred, its frame weak and surrounded by scattered debris. He inspects the damage carefully and instructs the bystanders not to approach, warning of possible collapse. As he turns to scan the crowd, his eyes land on a familiar face. Tao stands among the people, silently watching the ruins. After confirming they are both real, Hajime and Tao share a quiet hug. Hajime apologizes for disappearing without a word, but Tao is simply glad to see him again. Tao brings up the strange things happening in Kowloon. Even Hajime doesn't fully understand what's going on. Tao urges him to leave before things get worse, but Hajime clearly doesn't want to. Tao guesses it's because Reiko is still here. Hajime's reaction confirms it. He doesn't expect Tao to have met her too. Tao explains that the Reiko in Kowloon is different from the real one, and being around her must hurt. Hajime admits that it does, but changes the subject, asking why Tao came. Tao says he was worried, but more than that, there's someone important to him here too. Hajime teases him about falling for someone in Kowloon, but his tone shifts when Tao admits he's already been dumped. Still, Tao says he couldn't stay away from him. He is drawn to him as a person. Hajime throws back the same question Tao once asked him. Does he really know this person? Tao pauses. He says he's starting to, and he wants to keep knowing him. Hajime assumes Tao is there so he does not end up like him, but Tao counters that he's here because of Hajime. Though Hajime appreciates it, he insists he can't leave. The person Tao cares about is also an outsider, so Hajime urges him to take that chance and get out together. But Tao won't back down. He wants them both to leave. He argues that the Reiko in Kowloon isn't the real one anyway. Hajime doesn't want to hear it. Without another word, he turns and walks away. Elsewhere, Miyuki makes a call while walking through a dark alley, a drink in hand. He says he'll be visiting Dr. Wang's clinic in Kowloon. The clinic still stands in the current version of the city, but Miyuki isn't sure if the second version of Dr. Wang will be there. On the other line is Yulong speaking to Miyuki. He brings up how Miyuki never told his ex that he grew up in Kowloon, At the mention of his ex, Miyuki abruptly ends the call, leaving Yulon hanging. Suddenly, Miyuki feels a wave of dizziness. He stumbles, steadying himself against the wall before taking a sip of his drink. He wonders if it's heat stroke, though he felt fine the last time he explored this area with Tao. Maybe he's just getting too in his head about Kowloon. The thought barely finishes before his legs give out. He collapses, losing consciousness completely. In his dream, Miyuki finds himself back at the demolition of the second Kowloon walled city. He sits alone in a dimly lit bar, quietly drinking while the news plays in the background. Tao enters too and orders his usual drink and takes the seat beside him. Tao smokes slowly, eyeing Miyuki with unfamiliarity, who is clearly new to the area. The bartender remarks on Tao's confidence. He notes Tao's good looks and talents, suggesting life must be easy for him. Yet Tao's reality is far from that. He is a jack of all trades who is barely making ends meet and has just lost his place to stay. Miyuki suddenly speaks, admitting he is alone and broke something precious, so he needed a drink that night. Tao feels sympathy and asks if he should leave him be, but Miyuki insists the company wouldn't hurt. Seizing the moment, Tao suggests they go somewhere else. They leave the bar and walk down a dim alley. Tao asks Miyuki if he is cold and offers his jacket. He comments on Miyuki's vulnerability, pointing out how dangerous the neighborhood is. Yet despite just meeting, he followed him there without hesitation. Miyuki tells Tao about what he said back in the bar, that he called himself a jack of all trades just to avoid jealousy. He explains how that was disrespectful to both himself and others, and warns Tao to stop lying like that before it becomes a habit. They keep walking until Miyuki asks if they have arrived at the place Tao mentioned. Tao, who is now caught in his lies, instantly becomes embarrassed. He covers his face with his hand and admits he doesn't really know any good spots. Though he wants to take Miyuki somewhere nice, he is broke. Still, he won't let him go so easily and offers to buy him a drink instead. With this, Miyuki bursts out laughing as Tao spills everything so openly. He moves closer and presses a kiss on Tao's lips. Then after that, they decide to go to Miyuki's place and share a bed together. Miyuki expects Tao to be indifferent towards him because of his both male and female organs, something Tao likely hasn't seen before. But Tao insists that even if Miyuki had become a woman, he would still be in love with him. Before Miyuki can respond, Tao seals his lips with a passionate kiss. Miyuki reflects on his identity. He never strictly sees himself as a man or a woman, he only sees himself as his true self. But Tao accepts him fully, showing no concern for Miyuki's gender. Then Miyuki's vision darkens. The scent of face powder and the sound of women laughing pull him back to consciousness. He wakes up in a dressing room, and the first thing he sees is a woman with curlers in her hair. The performers explain they found him unconscious in the alley and brought him in. One of them hands him his glasses, which he puts on with a quiet thanks. Looking around, Miyuki asks if this is a burlesque club. The woman confirms it, saying it's a popular local spot. He asked about an artist named Sihan, but she hasn't heard of her. Frustrated, Miyuki rubs his forehead. The woman suggests visiting Dr. Wong if he still feels off. This confirms Miyuki's suspicion. The doctor is in Kowloon. Suddenly, the power goes out. Someone mentions it might be due to yesterday's collapse. Miyuki freezes confused. He hasn't heard anything about the Singhai Tower falling. Their conversation is cut off by a woman's voice calling from outside the door. It's Reiko. She introduces herself but quickly gets distracted upon noticing that even though the area is affected by the electricity's interruption, only the dressing room lights are out. Then she thanks the owner for working with them. Miyuki, seated quietly, intentionally draws her attention, prompting the owner to scold her gently for being rude. Miyuki stands almost as if he anticipated she'd be there. He remarks that luck is on his side, since he's been looking for her too. Riko, amused by his words, tells him she has questions of her own as well. Miyuki and Reiko continue their conversation at the Hebi Numa clinic. As soon as they settle in, Riko immediately brings up the Zirconians, asking what they are and whether she might be one of them. Miyuki laughs, a sound that unsettles her, and teases that she's quite the detective. But it was actually Yaomei who discovered that information online. Curious, Miyuki shifts the topic and asks about Riko's memories. Riko responds firmly, certain that no past memories will return. She believes she's an entirely different person now and that those memories were never truly hers to begin with. Miyuki observes her quietly, impressed by how clearly she seems to understand her own situation, and how easily she's able to accept it all. With this, Reiko shares that despite people like Hajime constantly comparing her to the real Reiko, she chooses to be her true self. There are things only she can decide, and she wants to hold on to that. Hearing this, Miyuki reflects. If Hajime knows the real Reiko, then he must be a real human, flesh and blood. There are real people still living in Kowloon like Yaomei, Tao, and himself. Yet Hajime continues to live with the memory of his dead fiancé. That, Miyuki thinks, is something else entirely. It mirrors the revenge he wanted for his father and his late son. The fact that Hajime knows the truth and still chooses to stay is unbelievable to Miyuki. Between his thoughts, Reiko suddenly speaks, saying she has real friends and lives as her true self. Hearing this, Miyuki thinks she shouldn't have a problem. Even without past memories, she's surrounded by people who accept her. She's building an identity of her own, which is never easy. But he suspects the reason she still feels unsatisfied is because, deep down, she wants Hajime to acknowledge her as someone real too. Miyuki admits he doesn't know what to call her. She's not a Zirconian, nor a clone. But since she was developed later on, after the original, he guesses she could be called a generic. Meanwhile, Yulong searches through Dr. Wong's files looking for something specific, but is caught in the act. Dr. Wong refuses to cooperate with him or Miyuki. Yulong presses on, insisting that Kowloon is filled with the dead, people like Reiko. She was one of the references for the Zirconian project, and Dr. Wong was there during her final moments. But Dr. Wong says there was nothing he could do. By the time he found her, she was already gone. She had taken her own life. Hajime stands before the burnt building, holding the keychain that reminds him of Reiko. He silently wishes everything was just a bad joke. The next morning, Reiko goes swimming with Yaomei and tells her about the conversation she had with Miyuki. Something about that talk made her think deeply, so she decides to move to a new room. Yaomei supports her decision, proud of her decision. Miyuki calling her a generic helped her realize something important. Even if she and the real Reiko share similarities, they are not the same person. She shouldn't have to carry someone else's past. The real Reiko no longer has anything to do with her life. From now on, what happens to Reiko's belongings should be left to Hajime. That night, Reiko returns home and takes a final look around her room. As she scans the space, she realizes there are still things she wants to take with her, like her goldfish success. Just then, the doorbell rings, an unusual sound at such a late hour. It's nearly midnight. She opens the door to find Hajime standing there. He doesn't come in, saying he just wanted to make sure she wasn't leaving tonight. Morning marks the real Reiko's death anniversary. Reiko gives him a soft smile and assures him she won't go anywhere. The next morning, Yaomei scolds her for breaking her promise to move out. Reiko shrugs it off. She brings up the anniversary of the real Reiko's death. Even Yaomei quiets down. It's not something easy to ignore. With that, Yaomei insists on at least moving Reiko's bed to change the room's appearance. Reiko mentions wanting patterned curtains, and Yaomei lights up at the idea, even volunteering to sew them herself. She suggests they go shopping for fabric in Hong Kong, already planning a dinner stop after their errand. Meanwhile, Tao is in his apartment, poking at a pack of instant food. He sighs, craving a proper meal, but finding safe food in Kowloon feels like a gamble. Left with no choice, he reaches for his phone to order something online instead. Coincidentally, Yaomei and Reiko are about to leave Kowloon when they run into Tao, who happens to be there to pick up his pizza order. Tao calls out to the delivery guy, who looks visibly relieved, worried he might have been pranked. The man then casually comments that their service is the only one that still delivers to these abandoned ruins. This immediately sets Yaomei off. She snaps, insisting that Kowloon is a perfectly livable place. How dare he call it abandoned? The delivery man shrugs and explains that technically, after the demolition, living there is supposed to be illegal. Reiko tries to follow up, asking more about what he means. But the delivery man, now clearly uncomfortable, brushes past her without responding. After the delivery man leaves, Tao begins to explain everything. It's true, he says. The man couldn't see Reiko at all. In fact, he couldn't see Kowloon or anyone who lives there. Tao urges Yaomei to look up the real Kowloon and confirms that it was demolished 3 years ago. Yaomei scoffs at the idea, finding it absurd. But Reiko can't deny what she experienced. The delivery man called the place abandoned ruins and ignored her completely. To him, neither she nor the city existed. Tao explains that only certain people, those like Yaomei and himself, can see and enter Kowloon. But those who were originally from this version of the city, like Reiko, are invisible to the outside world. That's why she must never leave. Reiko remembers all the times Hajime begged her to stay, to never stray from him. It all begins to make sense now. Still, Yaomei dismisses it as nonsense. Reiko has always felt real to her. But despite Yaomei's protests, Reiko steps back, quietly deciding that maybe Hajime was right all along. She won't leave Kowloon. Yaomei becomes hysterical, refusing to believe that Reiko can't exist outside Kowloon. Reiko's presence has always felt real, at least to her. But Tao gently explains that even he, who once lived in Kowloon before its demolition, began noticing strange duplicates. Second versions of people, including himself, existing only within Kowloon. He shares that he once conducted an experiment by bringing himself into Kowloon, and suddenly, the second version vanished immediately. It confirmed his theory that two versions of the same person cannot coexist in Kowloon. However, Reiko is a different case. Her original self is proven to have died long ago, which makes it unlikely for her current version to vanish. That thought terrifies her. If the real Reiko were still alive, then she should have been the one to disappear. In this uncertain world, Reiko starts to question her very existence, just like the fragile reality of Kowloon itself. But Yaomei refuses to accept any of it. She clings to the belief that Reiko is real, and determined to uncover the truth with her own eyes, she decides to investigate further by traveling to Hong Kong herself. Reiko remains confused after everything she has just learned, and Tao, despite his efforts, admits he doesn't have all the answers either. Still, knowing how much Hajime cares about her, Tao simply wants to help however he can. Before leaving to eat his pizza, he tells Reiko to reach out to him if she ever needs anything. Back in central Kowloon, Reiko continues to wander, her mind still clouded with questions. As she walks aimlessly, Hajime spots her and calls out. She tells him about her canceled plans with Yaomei, which didn't work out in the end. Because of this, Hajime suggests they grab some dumplings together. Reiko pauses for a moment, then agrees. At his apartment, Tao lies awake in bed, casually eating pizza, but his thoughts linger on Reiko's strange situation. Even though he's grown used to the surreal nature of life in Kowloon, something about Riko's case unsettles him deeply. He now fully understands why Miyuki is using this bizarre phenomenon for revenge. Nothing hurts more than seeing someone you love looking and sounding exactly the same, yet knowing it's not truly them. The warmth, the voice, the face, it's all familiar, but ultimately a ghost of what once was. And still, you can't help but get attached. Meanwhile, Hajime is lost in a memory back when the real Reiko was alive. They used to play mahjong with the elderly on the busy streets of Kowloon. Reiko was always the crowd's favorite, often winning with ease. One day after a long session, Reiko dropped a slip of paper from her pocket. It was a prescription for insomnia. Hajime didn't know why she needed it, but Reiko admitted to having problems sleeping at night, so she needed sleeping pills. From that day on, he made it his mission to help her sleep by tiring her out with fun and laughter. He'd tease her about cheating in mahjong, and she'd laugh, saying she was just lucky. Maybe it was that luck that made Hajime fall for her enough to leave everything behind and move to Kowloon, just to be close to her. Now back in the present, Miyuki stands quietly inside his father's quarters. As they speak casually, his father suddenly calls him by a different name, Horan. Miyuki gently corrects him, but his father doesn't acknowledge the mistake. This prompts Miyuki to glance at the portrait hanging on the wall, his father, smiling beside his deceased wife and son. The sight unsettles him. Without saying a word, Miyuki picks up his phone and calls Yulong, who answers just in time. Miyuki listens closely as Yulong shares new findings about the real Reiko, once a patient of Dr. Wong. According to the records, her official cause of death was an overdose, strong sleeping pills prescribed in unusually high doses by her doctor. It wasn't something she could have accidentally done. The amount required meant she would have needed to consume an excessive quantity intentionally. Though Hajime wasn't directly responsible, the circumstances surrounding her death are grim. It's no wonder he carries such a deep sense of guilt. This makes Yulong wonder, what kind of pills could it have been? Strangely, the drug's name was deleted from all official records. Miyuki smiles faintly at the thought. At the very least, it gives him something to tie himself to Reiko. Her loved one will surely direct their hatred toward Hebinuma for the cover-up. But in truth, the only person they should hate is his father. On top of everything, the demolition of Second Kowloon had been Miyuki's very first assignment, ordered by his father solely to erase all traces of Miyuki's birth records. He is, without question, a truly detestable man. Meanwhile, a mysterious man wearing a mask silently infiltrates Yulong's hidden room, attempting to extract data from his computer, only to find the system completely empty. Later, he reappears, now covertly observing Hajime, Reiko, and Xiaohe as they chat casually along the streets. His gaze lingers on Xiaohe, zooming in on her peculiar sense of fashion. Then, in a quiet alley, he removes his mask, revealing a face identical to Xiaohe's but clearly male. He makes a call to his superior, addressing him as Master, Miyuki's father. His own name, coincidentally or not, is also Xiaohe. Tasked by his master, he is now actively investigating Kowloon and monitoring key figures within it. Back on the street, Hajime, now walking alone with Reiko, excitedly suggests going to karaoke. As he leads the way, Reiko silently reflects on her strange existence. Here at Kowloon, she is real. She can move freely, laugh, be seen. It almost feels normal. The only anomaly, she thinks, must be the delivery guy. Yet the fear lingers. If what Teo said is true, Yaume may never see her again or Kowloon at all. As they pass the burned remains of Singhai Tower, Hajime slows down, his eyes fixed on the rapid progress of the reconstruction. Beside him, Reiko walks in silence. Hajime senses the change in her and asks about it. So she looks at him, eyes filled with questions. She remembers what he said in the past, telling her not to go anywhere. Before he can find a reason, she casts another thought at him. Will he stay? Will he promise not to leave her? The chaos of recent days has left her uncertain, but being with him feels a little steadier. Hajime can't speak. Instead, he pulls her into an embrace. She stiffens at first, then melts into the warmth of his hold. Her tears fall silently. He tightens his grip, pressing her close. The world may be hollow and shifting, but he assures her that no matter what happened, he will always be there for her. Yaomi rides the train to Hong Kong as her thoughts drift. It has been 6 months since she escaped from home, vanishing after her plastic surgery. Wanting a fresh start, she searched for a place where no one knew her and found Kowloon. In there, she met people who accepted her, most especially Reiko, who taught her about being her absolute self. When the train reaches Hong Kong, she steps out with determination, only to be stunned as her payment card is declined. Her account shows insufficient funds. Panic sets in, so she calls Tao, her voice shaking and loud with desperation. He explains what she already fears. The money she earned in Kowloon holds no value outside it. Without hesitation, Tao offers to lend her money. What surprises Yaume more is the amount he's willing to give without question. With her immediate problem solved, she turns her focus to the deeper mystery. In the crowded streets of Hong Kong, Yaume begins her purpose, approaching strangers and asking what they know about Kowloon. The answers she receives are all strikingly similar. Everyone says the same thing. Kowloon was demolished years ago. It no longer exists. Some even laugh it off as an urban legend. But Yaume knows better. She lives there. The growing doubt in her chest feels like a betrayal. Overwhelmed, she breaks down in the middle of the road. An old man notices her distress and cautiously approaches. Knowing her dilemma, the old man tells her he once lived in Kowloon before it was torn down. He saw the demolition himself, like all the residents who were forced to leave. But when Yaume insists that the place still exists, the man stiffens. He tells her she must be caught up in one of those bizarre online urban legends, just like his grandson. Then, almost reluctantly, he mentions a rumor, one that claims the Hebinuma group led the demolition of Second Kowloon to hide something. Still, he keeps his words limited and says no more, urging Yaomei to search the internet if she really wants answers. Taking the old man's advice, Yaomei rushes to a nearby internet cafe, determined to uncover the truth. She scores forums and websites, but nearly every post about Kowloon has already been deleted. Just as she's about to give up, she stumbles upon a single remaining thread. The anonymous poster is still active, so she quickly sends a message. To her surprise, the reply comes almost instantly. Without hesitation, Yaomei shares her experience, how she lives in Kowloon. The poster, however, admits he can't see the place, but that only strengthens his resolve. He wants to prove that Kowloon still exists. The poster shares everything he knows about the demolition of the Second Kowloon. While it's a confirmed fact that the place was destroyed, he believes it has been recreated in some mysterious way. He wants to work with Yaomei to uncover the truth behind its reappearance. At first, Yaomei has no idea where to start, but with his help, they begin piecing together the puzzle, starting by listing all the strange occurrences she has noticed. Thinking about it, Yaomei realizes that the presence of people who should be dead is already bizarre enough. She hesitates to tell the poster, fearing he might not believe her. But before she can decide, the poster shares that he too is investigating this for a friend, someone important to him. This prompts Yaomei to open up. She tells him everything: the dead still living in Kowloon, people having duplicates who cannot coexist, and how the second version vanishes once the original reappears. With all the confusing information, Yaomei begins to wonder if she might be the anomaly. But the poster reassures her. He has also spoken to others who can see and access Kowloon just like her. What Yaomei doesn't know is that the anonymous poster she's chatting with is actually Yulong, who is quietly gathering information from Miyuki about the true nature of Kowloon. As they review everything they know so far, Yaomei happens to mention Hajime, suggesting he might know more about what's really going on. Even if he's still puzzled himself, he's certain of one thing: Yaomei isn't an anomaly. It's far too early to jump to that conclusion. If anything, maybe it's Kowloon itself that is the true anomaly. Yaomei begins to share how she first entered Kowloon, but as she types, a strange realization hits her. 6 months ago, it was March, cold and dim, as she wandered the city looking for a place to stay before morning arrived. That's when she stumbled upon Kowloon. But from the moment she entered, the season never shifted. It has always been midsummer in Kowloon. Thinking back, she recalls the sky always being clear and herself constantly wearing summer clothes. She shares this strange detail with Yulong, who found it helpful. Yaomei also mentions a rumor she once heard, that the demolition of the Second Kowloon was a cover-up orchestrated by the Hebinuma group. To her surprise, Yulong partly confirms the rumor and hints at a secret hidden within Kowloon, something Yaomei must see for herself once she returns. As the clock ticks almost midnight, Yaomei decides to spend the night in Hong Kong and return to Kowloon in the morning. But before ending the chat, she and Yulong exchange contact information. As Yaomei steps outside the internet cafe, she bumps into a man, Yulong, who uses the computer right beside hers. She doesn't realize he's the same person she's been chatting with online. The next morning, Reiko lies in bed, naked, beside Hajime. A message from Yaomei lights up her phone, asking to meet. Reiko quietly slips out from under the sheets, eager to see her friend. As she moves to leave, Hajime reaches out, pulls her close, and kisses her on the lips before letting her go. Hajime had a flashback once again about the real Reiko. One day, he brought them hot coffee, but the cafe accidentally added sugar when it was meant to be plain. Despite this, Reiko smiled and invited Hajime back to her house to cook French toast. They cooked together, Reiko taking the lead as if she were a master in the kitchen. The French toast turned out perfect, golden, crisp edges, and just the right sweetness. During that quiet moment, Reiko opened up about her parents. The French toast was her late mother's recipe. Though both her parents had died in an accident years ago, remembering them through things like this recipe didn't make her sad. Hajime once thought she was strong for that, but in truth, it was the opposite. Reiko was the kind of person who refused to read the second volume of a book. Hajime didn't understand what that meant, and Reiko never finished explaining. The kettle had started to whistle, cutting her off before she could say more. Now back in the present, Hajime sits quietly on the steps of a staircase, a soda in hand, unable to shake off the lingering ghost of the real Reiko. No matter how much he tries, he keeps comparing her to the Reiko he sees now. Later that day, Reiko meets Yaomei and Tao at a cafe. Her aura is noticeably brighter, and a wide, cheerful smile spreads across her face, leaving both Yaomei and Tao staring at her in stunned confusion. Something must have happened. Reiko bubbles with excitement, eager to share what transpired between her and Hajime, but she chooses to keep it to herself for the time being. Still, the mood remains light as Yaomei shifts the conversation, recounting everything that unfolded during their time in Hong Kong. True enough, everyone in Hong Kong seems to believe that the second-walled Kowloon has long been demolished. However, a single online user appears to share the same mission as Yaomei to prove Kowloon's existence. Yaomei opens her mouth to speak, but the waitress arrives, delivering their drinks and interrupting the moment. Yaomei eyes her coffee with hesitation. Noticing this, Reiko immediately suspects it might be because the coffee isn't real. Tao, sitting beside them, quietly agrees. Despite the doubts, Yaomei chooses to believe. She lifts the glass and drinks it all in a single gulp. However, when Yaomei finishes the drink, something strange happens. She seems to forget everything she was about to say about Kowloon. A blank look crosses her face, and for a moment, she appears lost in thought, unable to recall her earlier excitement. The atmosphere shifts awkwardly before they laugh it off, brushing it aside. But Tao remains quiet, too stunned to speak, already piecing together what might be happening to Yao Mei. Elsewhere in his secret room, Yulong receives a sudden message from Yao Mei, informing him that she has safely returned to Kowloon. Curious, he asked about the summer phenomenon she previously mentioned. But to his surprise, Yao Mei seems to have no memory of it at all. At that moment, Yulong understands, Yao Mei has already been swallowed up by Kowloon. He expected this possibility, so he merely chuckles to himself, though he is still wondering what might have caused this. As Yulong suspected, it must have been from food. But more than that, it's the act of consuming something despite sensing it might be off. Perhaps the desire to believe in Kowloon is what allows it to swallow someone entirely. Meanwhile, in one of Kowloon's street stores, Miyuki is about to purchase a basket of goods when the store owner informs him they no longer accept e-payments due to the collapse. Unfortunately, Miyuki doesn't have any cash. The owner, unwilling to cancel the transaction, grows increasingly irritable. Just as tension rises, Tao arrives and voluntarily pays for everything. Without saying a word, Miyuki exits the store abruptly, clearly avoiding any interaction with Tao. He tries to blend into the crowd, walking forward as if nothing happened. But Tao catches up quickly, prompting Miyuki to speed up, denying every attempt at conversation. There, without hesitation, Miyuki kicks a stack of logs, halting his pursuit. Just before disappearing completely, Tao manages to shout a warning not to consume anything in Kowloon, and reminds him that Hajime is real. But Miyuki already knows that. No matter how loud Tao calls out, Miyuki doesn't look back. He walks deeper into the alley. As he rounds a familiar corner, he slows down. Something about the path feels familiar. Looking closer, he realizes where he is. It's the narrow street leading to Dr. Wang's clinic. Meanwhile, Yulong remains in his secret room, staring at the photos and information of both Reiko and Hajime. He reflects on the idea of being trapped in a past that no longer exists, just like Kowloon. At the same time, Miyuki reaches for the door to Dr. Wang's clinic when his phone suddenly rings. It's Yulong. He instantly questions why Miyuki is in Kowloon when he should be in Hong Kong. The question snaps Miyuki out of his trance, and after a moment of silence, he turns around, deciding to leave and head back. That afternoon, Reiko brings lunch to Yao Mei's place, where she is busy stitching up dresses. Over the meal, Reiko shares everything, how she and Hajime are now officially together. Yone beams with joy, truly happy for her friend. Their conversation is interrupted when a maintenance man arrives to inspect the fire alarm. It's the male version of Xiaohei. While scanning the room, he can't help but admire the dresses Yomei has made. Riko, curious, asks which one he likes most. The question catches him off guard. He's a man after all, but he ends up describing his favorite style in stunning detail. The answer leaves both Reiko and Yaomei quietly stunned. As it turns out, he used to wear dresses like that when he had a slimmer figure in his younger years. But now with his current build, he feels those days are behind him. Still, liking something doesn't have to end just because you changed. Before he begins the inspection, Yaomei gently tells him to take off his vest for her. Tao, now alone in his apartment, grows increasingly frustrated after his latest encounter with Miyuki. But his thoughts soon drift to Yaomei and what she experienced the day before. It was unsettling. While it's true that consuming food in Kowloon may affect one's memory or mind, it never seemed to happen to Hajime, who has lived there for quite some time and remains completely sane. This bothers Tao, prompting him to take action. He packs ready-made food into his backpack, determined to visit Hajime and keep his guard up. Meanwhile, the male Xiaowei is deep in thought. His encounter with Reiko left a strong impression. She's nothing like the Reiko he once knew. It's as if she's truly living her own life apart from the past. Unexpectedly, he finds that people in Kowloon live more honestly, more raw and real than he ever imagined. Even Yaomei, who took the time to stylishly repair his vest, has quietly earned his trust. Slowly, Xiaowei begins to understand. The things a person fears to lose don't just disappear in Kowloon. Instead, they grow one by one in this strange place. Xiaowei immediately reported his findings about Kowloon to his master. From his observations as a former resident himself, the replicas within Kowloon were impressively accurate, yet there were notable inconsistencies, both in structure and lifestyle. This extended to the residents themselves, who were likely replicas of individuals from the original Kowloon. Reiko was a prime example. Though she resembled the real Reiko in voice and appearance, Xiaowei noticed significant differences in personality and behavior. It's as if she has a personality of her own. These inconsistencies caught Miyuki's attention as well, further confirming Xiaowei's suspicions. If he were to draw a conclusion, Xiaowei believed the Zirconium project would most likely succeed in replicating deceased individuals, but only within the boundaries of the generic Kowloon. Miyuki once made an experiment proving that if both the real and replica versions of a person existed in the same space, the generic version would inevitably vanish. Two versions of the same person couldn't coexist. This further reinforced his hypothesis that people like Reiko, who are replicas made in Kowloon, would cease to exist the moment they tried to leave. The real question now is whether the same rule applies even to those whose real versions have already passed away. Xiaowei has no answer to this yet. He's still waiting for Miyuki's next move. Reiko, being a key subject in the Zirconium project, is unlikely to be put at risk by Miyuki, making her a difficult test case. Xiaowei needs to find another generic version whose original has already died to test whether they can exist outside Kowloon. But if no such person is found, his master insists that he use Reiko instead. Xiaowei hesitates. He wants to speak up at the people in Kowloon, even if replicas are living real lives of their own. But his master refuses to listen. The demand is clear, and his master urges him to continue investigating before he finally ends the call abruptly. Yulong, now with Miyuki in his secret room, talks about the weight of his choices. Being part of the Hebinuma family has led him to this very moment, one he knows you might come to regret. Dr. Wong also grows concerned for him. But despite Yulong's efforts to reason with him, warning that knowingly choosing a path of regret is a disgrace, Miyuki refuses to listen. With a cold glare, he shuts Yulong up, telling him to just do his job before leaving the room to have lunch with Dr. Wong. As the door closes, Yulong realizes something. Just as he feared, Miyuki seems dangerously obsessed with Kowloon now. But unlike Miyuki, Yulong vows to choose a path he won't regret. Even while having lunch with Dr. Wong, Miyuki can't shake off Yulong's words. His mind drifts. He wonders what could have been the outcome if he had never contacted the Hebinuma, never left his mother behind, and chosen Tao instead. Meanwhile, at her home, Reiko is hanging laundry when the doorbell rings. It's Hajime, and she welcomes him in with a bright smile. As he steps inside, Hajime's eyes wander around the apartment. He can't help but search for traces of the real Reiko. On the veranda, Reiko mentions the sugar sticks that have been put together with her coffee, which stirs a memory in him that reminds him of the real Reiko. On impulse, he suggests they make French toast. But to his quiet surprise, this Reiko doesn't seem to know how. Although Reiko tries to cook the French toast enthusiastically, she still doesn't seem to know how to make it. When she asks Hajime for help, his mood shifts, and he suddenly excuses himself, clearly wanting to avoid any conversation. Their encounter leaves Reiko wondering what went wrong. That afternoon, she lay in bed, still bothered. Even though Hajime once promised he would never leave her, he remains distant, and it makes her think that perhaps he still hasn't gotten over the real Reiko at all. With this, she has a bold idea. Reiko brings out the box she had set aside, containing the real Reiko's belongings. She picks up the glasses first and tries them on. The moment she does, a glimpse of the real Reiko's memory flashes before her eyes. Startled, she instinctively rips them off and throws them away, the glasses clattering onto the floor. Meanwhile, the male Xiaowei is about to enter Yulong's room to clean up, but Yulong wastes no time. He directly confronts him about the micro-listening device hidden under the table. Xiaowei tries to play it cool and act clueless, but Yulong isn't fooled. He points to the piercing in Xiaowei's ear. He knows that's how he's been listening in. Cutting to the chase, Yulong offers Xiaowei a deal. Join his side in exchange for protection from the old Hebinuma and a higher wage. But in return, he must do one thing for Yulong: eliminate the generic Reiko. A quick flashback showed Hajime playing mahjong with the elders in Kowloon, their conversation drifting toward Bai Yuan Shan Tower, a notorious place known for illegal dealings and constant danger. Anyone who stepped inside was bound to find trouble. Coincidentally, the real Reiko had been there at that time, speaking to the elderly landlord about an issue with the building's management. As a gesture of goodwill, Reiko even offered her a small gift. While they talked, the landlord shared a bit of wisdom. She said the people who came to that place were often those who had nowhere else to go, people willing to risk it all. Though she herself wasn't a gambler, she admitted to admiring that kind of resolve. Just as Reiko sat down, a cat wandered into the room. The landlord fed it and casually continued their conversation, mentioning she had heard of Reiko's skill at mahjong. Reiko tried to credit it to luck, but the old woman asked if she would also win in the game of life. Even she didn't know the answer. It was something only time could reveal. When Reiko stepped outside, Hajime appeared, rushing and clearly agitated. After hearing where she had gone, he grew angry and insisted on handling things in that area himself from then on. Now back in the present, Xiaowei, caught red-handed by Yulong, is sitting on the steps of the stairs with his head down, still unsure of what to do next. When Yulong offered him a job to eliminate the generic Reiko in exchange for protection and money, Xiaowei didn't have the heart to go through with it. Even if she wasn't considered real, something about her felt genuine, and after spending time with her, Xiaowei had grown soft. Yulong even raised the offer, yet Xiaowei still refused. In response to this, Yulong showed him an old photo, one from before he changed. He used to look like Xiaowei from Kowloon, dressed in fancy, fashionable clothes, but he abandoned that image once it no longer fit him. Yulong seemed to know more than Xiaowei expected, even guessing that Xiaowei had encountered a generic version of himself in Kowloon already. Normally, two versions couldn't exist in the same place, but Yulong hinted that Xiaowei might be an exception. With this, he brought out a new offer. Using the generic Terra, Xiaowei could become the version of himself he used to be, the one he had lost. At the same time, Yomei is enjoying a cone of ice cream while strolling through the streets of Kowloon. She is lost in a daydream about romance when she happens to come across Xiaowei, who looks visibly troubled. Seeing how down he seems, she approaches him and tries to talk, but no matter how many questions she asks, Xiaowei doesn't open up. Yomei notices he is still wearing the vest she made for him. Just when he looks like he's about to say something, the generic version of Xiaowei runs past them. Her sudden appearance makes him freeze, sweat, and feel like vomiting. Seeing Yomei happily eating her ice cream, Xiaowei throws it away and warns her not to eat anything. In that moment, he finally makes a decision. He never wants to do anything that could make Yomei sad. He walks away quietly, leaving Yomei puzzled, wondering what just happened. Maybe, she thinks, it could be the romance she's been dreaming of. Yomei's thoughts are interrupted by a sudden phone call from Reiko. When she answers, she hears Reiko panicking on the other end of the line. Her words are unclear and barely audible, so Yomei decides to visit her instead. At Reiko's apartment, Reiko explains what happened when she wore the strange glasses earlier. She saw scattered footage that seems not to be from the present. Curious, Yomei tries them on herself with shaking hands, but unlike Reiko, she sees nothing. However, when Reiko puts the glasses on again, the mysterious footage appears once more. Based on everything they've gathered so far, they begin to suspect that the glasses are showing someone else's perspective. And since the glasses originally belonged to the real Reiko, it's likely that the visions are from her point of view. With determination, Reiko puts the glasses back on, eager to see more. Though the images remain fragmented, she becomes more certain they belong to the real Reiko, especially when Hajime keeps appearing in them. That afternoon at their office, Reiko notices that Hajime hasn't returned from his rounds. She begins to wonder if he's avoiding her on purpose. Alone on the veranda, she pulls out the glasses from her pocket, but just as she puts them on, Hajime suddenly appears at the door. She turns and sees two sides of him. The version through the real Reiko's point of view is cheerful, his eyes hidden beneath a smile, while the Hajime standing in front of her wears a plain, bored expression. Reiko suddenly feels the need to explain herself, even though she doesn't have to, but Hajime only asks if she wants to get lunch. She declines, saying she has plans with Yame, so he quietly says goodbye and leaves. Left by herself, she realizes, just as there are sides of Hajime only she knows, there are also sides of him that only the real Reiko ever saw. That night at Reiko's apartment, Yame sits with paper and pen in hand, ready to write down everything Reiko sees through the glasses. The first thing Reiko sees is Baiyuan Tower, one of the most dangerous places in Kowloon. Though the company she works for owns properties there, it's Hajime who usually handles that side of town since he doesn't want Reiko going near it. Wanting answers, the two decide to check the place out themselves. Nervous but determined, they bring anything they can use for defense. As they step into the alleyway, Reiko suddenly stops as she notices talisman stickers covering the walls. Reiko grows curious, while Yome, who is slightly shaken, questions why they're doing this at all. Still, Reiko remains firm. Maybe all of this will reveal the truth about the real Reiko's death and why she exists now with the same face. The two continue walking through the dim alleyway, but Yame seems bothered by something, like she's forgetting something important. As they go further, they pause when Reiko suddenly stops. She recognizes the narrow path ahead. It's the exact place she saw through the glasses. From the shadows of the alley, they hear slow footsteps approaching. Both of them freeze, bracing for the worst. But then a familiar figure steps out into the faint light. It's just Xiaowei, and the tension quickly fades. He explains he's there for the fire alarm inspection. Seeing an opportunity, Yome suggests they tag along with him toward the central area for safety. However, Reiko seems distracted. She walks over to one of the walls and carefully peels off a talisman sticker. Yome, her voice trembling with fear, begs Reiko to stop and turn back, but Reiko presses on. Behind the sticker, a text reading, 403, forbidden. The next day, they decide to report everything to Tao. They meet at a quiet cafe, and after hearing the story, Tao believes them without hesitation. Reiko seizes the moment to ask about the real Reiko. Since Tao and the real Reiko used to be close, she hopes he can give her insight. She believes the memory of Baiyuan Tower holds a clue, possibly connected to the real Reiko's death. However, Tao doesn't have any concrete information about the real Reiko's death. He even admits that he was never particularly fond of her. To him, the real Reiko was always distant and mysterious, so much so that he could never fully trust her. There was something about her presence, a kind of negative energy, that constantly put him on edge. When she died, his only regret was not being there more for Hajime. Reiko suggests that the real Reiko may have taken her own life, but Yaome finds that hard to believe, especially since she was happily engaged to Hajime. Then again, as Tao said, she was unpredictable, a mystery from the beginning. This conversation explains why Tao was initially so cold to Reiko. He feared she would bring the same pain. But to his surprise, she and the real Reiko are nothing alike. Even Yaome points out that Reiko means no harm. However, Tao reveals a sad truth. Even just her presence, her identical appearance and voice, might be hurting Hajime already more than he lets on. Suddenly, Xiaowei appears at the door of the cafe to inspect the fire alarms, but the moment his eyes meet Tao's, he freezes. Yaome, clueless, tries to introduce them, but before she can finish, Xiaowei quickly forces a cheerful smile and shakes Tao's hand as if it's their first time meeting. Then Xiaowei excuses himself in haste and disappears through the door. Not long after, Tao also gets up and leaves silently. With Tao gone, Reiko can no longer hold back her tears. She remembers how Hajime came to her apartment at midnight on the real Reiko's death anniversary. Maybe it's better if she distances herself, she thinks. But Yaome gently reminds her that none of it is her fault nor Hajime's. There's pain inside her, but Reiko admits she has no regrets about falling for him despite all of it. Meanwhile, while Xiaowei walks alone through the streets, someone suddenly pulls him into a dark corner. It's Tao, sharp-eyed and serious. Xiaowei tries to act dumb, but Tao sees through the act. Xiaowei may look different now, but Tao remembers him all too well. Tao questions Xiaowei's intentions for returning to Kowloon, but for past residents like Xiaowei, Kowloon is too hard to ignore. As they talk, the generic Xiaowei suddenly passes by, which stuns Tao. He's even more shocked that the generic didn't disappear despite the original being present. Xiaowei, who clearly knows more than he lets on, offers only a vague answer before hurrying off again. Meanwhile, Reiko sits quietly, trying to make sense of what she saw behind the talisman sticker last night, a common error code meaning she has no permission to access. She thinks back to Teva's words about the real Reiko being a mystery, someone even he couldn't understand. Deep in thought, she lights a cigarette, trying to calm her chest. Then the door creaks open. It's Hajime, who simply greets her and joins her in smoking too. The first thing Hajime mentions is Reiko's glasses, and that's when something clicks in her mind. Maybe it's better if they just go back to being colleagues. Ever since they spent the night together in her apartment, things have been strange between them. She won't pretend it didn't happen, nor does she intend to forget it, but what she refuses to do is hurt Hajime. After saying everything, she tosses her cigarette away and heads back into the office. Regaining her composure, Reiko becomes more determined than ever to be her true self. She grabs her things and informs her manager that she's going out for her rounds. As she walks out of the office, she tells herself that she's ready now to find the truth. Just outside the office door, she spots another talisman sticker. Peeling it off, she finds a new message underneath, 202, accepted. Curious, she searches the meaning on her phone and discovers that it's a code indicating that a request has been accepted, but the process has not yet been completed. While doing her rounds, Reiko looks around, peeling every talisman sticker she can find in hopes of uncovering answers hidden behind them. As she works, her mind drifts the thoughts of Kowloon, how little she actually knows about it. It's strange enough for a demolished town to reappear, but even stranger for it to hold the face of someone who's already dead. As she walks, her thoughts spiral. Questions about Kowloon's true nature, her own identity, and the real Reiko's past fill her head. By the time she stops, she's already peeled off 30 talisman stickers. 20 of them were blank, 9 said 403, and 1 read 202. Tired and frustrated, she sits in silence, her eyes are settling on the glasses once again. On impulse, she puts them on and sees a smoking area, with walls covered in talisman stickers. So without hesitation, she decides to head there next. She keeps walking, her thoughts tangle between Hajime and the real Reiko, until she reaches the smoking area. The walls are plastered with talisman stickers, just as she saw through the glasses. She peels one off and the message underneath surprises her. Do not look anymore. That same night, Yame walks home, exhausted from work. That persistent feeling keeps nagging at her, like she's forgetting something important. She tries to recall what it is, but her rumbling stomach interrupts her thoughts, reaching into her bag for something to eat. It's the one Yulong gave her during their last meeting in Hong Kong. Without thinking, she pops it into her mouth. The moment the taste hits her tongue, her eyes widen. In a rush, memories come flooding back. Yulong sits alone in his secret room, deep in thought as he tries to understand the real reason why some people can still see Kowloon. At first, he assumes it's purely due to emotional attachment, but when he remembers Yame, he realizes there must be something more. He expands his thinking and pulls up the faces of those who can see Kowloon on his monitor. Hajime, Yame, Miyuki, and Tao. He analyzes them one by one. Miyuki likely loved his life in Kowloon, which could explain why he keeps returning. Even Yulong loved the city before its demolition. Then there's Hajime, who had a stable job in Japan, but left everything behind 3 years ago, likely haunted by memories of his fiancée that are still tied to Kowloon. Yulong narrows his focus and changes the view on his monitor, bringing up images of the 2 versions of Xiaohe. His theory strengthens. Those with deep-rooted ties to their past are the ones who continue to see Kowloon. Meanwhile, Dr. Wong sits quietly in his office, staring at an old photo frame of him, Yulong, and Miyuki from their younger days. But his thoughts are interrupted when Yulong enters the room. Without saying much, Yulong simply states that he's heading out, but Dr. Wong already knows what he's up to. True enough, Yulong returns to the site where Kowloon once stood. All that remains are crumbling ruins. As he walks closer, he's pulled back into memory, the day he found out Miyuki was to be adopted by the Hebi Numa. When Miyuki finally told him, it was already too late. The boy had a snake tattoo inked across his back, and his tongue had been split in 2. This was his way of proving his loyalty to the Hebi Numa. Though shocked at first, Yulong came to understand Miyuki's decision. It was all for his mother's medical treatment, a sacrifice Miyuki saw as something so small compared to the reward. Touched by his resolve, Yulong sliced off part of his ear, willing to join Miyuki's decision. However, things took a dark turn when Miyuki's mother died, despite everything he did for the Hebi Numa. Her death shattered him, and that's when the hatred took root. Miyuki came to despise his adoptive father, and the only thing left in his mind was revenge. He turned to Yulong for help, but now Yulong realizes he must stop Miyuki before he becomes completely consumed by Kowloon. Standing amidst the ruins of the old city, Yulong questions whether he made the right decisions. But just as doubt clouds his mind, a sudden gust of wind sweeps through. He closes his eyes for a moment, and when he opens them, he sees it. Kowloon restored to its original form. That's when he realizes that it isn't attachment that lets people see Kowloon, it's regret. Elsewhere, Yome meets Tao in a quiet place. She tells him she's finally remembered everything from her time in Hong Kong, including the fact that she still owes him money since Kowloon currency doesn't work outside. Yome shares everything she's learned about Kowloon, that in Hong Kong, the people always knew it was gone. With that realization, tears slipped down her cheeks. All she ever wanted was to prove Riko's existence, but now it feels like she's proving the opposite. Tao wants to comfort her, but he also knows the truth. She must leave. Her existence is real and Kowloon isn't. She doesn't belong there, but neither does he, nor Miyuki, nor even Hajime. Despite everything, Yome can't help but feel a deep sadness for Reiko. She lives in Kowloon as her truest self because Reiko encouraged her to. Reiko is her friend, but Tao gently reminds her that while it's good to care for others, she must also consider what she wants. Tao admits that, like her, he came to Kowloon for someone else, but he's made his own choices since. He refuses to leave with regrets. That's when Yome recalls something else. Back when she was in Hong Kong, she heard a strange rumor that the Hebi Numa group was behind the demolition of Kowloon as a cover-up. Supposedly, they were hiding something important, and to bury the truth, they destroyed the city. The key to uncovering it all, according to the rumor, lies hidden in the talismans scattered throughout the city. Tao is surprised to hear this. He knows about the talismans but had no idea the Hebi Numa group might be involved. Still, he warns Yao Mei to stay away from the talismans as they might be tied to something dangerous. Then, Yao Mei shares one last detail she noticed: the endless summer in Kowloon, a summer that never ends and never moves on. Later that day, Tao receives a call from Hajime. Meanwhile, Yao Mei is still unsure of what to do. She feels conflicted. Solving the mystery of Kowloon was never part of her plan. She only wants to live as her true self, just as Reiko once told her to. Their meeting happens by chance, yet it changes how Yao Mei sees herself. But when she thinks of her mother, a strange emotion pulls her back to the life she left behind. Elsewhere, Reiko puts on the glasses again and sees more fragments of the real Reiko's life. In one vision, she watches her buy pills in exchange for a talisman in a dark alleyway. Alarmed, Reiko calls Yao Mei, who is quietly holding a pair of earrings, lost in thought. Reiko explains what she saw and tells her about the location. She wants to go there to confirm the truth. Yao Mei, concerned, tells her it might be dangerous. But Reiko, sensing that she is close to the truth, is determined to find out about it. Seeing that she won't change her mind, Yao Mei decides to go with her. When the call ends, Yao Mei sits in deep thought. The medicine and talisman Reiko saw are clearly connected, and everything seems to lead back to the Hebi Numa group. She can't just let Reiko investigate alone, knowing it's this dangerous. Meanwhile, Xiaowei elsewhere is still troubled by Yulong's offer. Kill Reiko and he'll return to his original self. But no matter how he tries, he just can't go through with it. As fate would have it, Reiko passes by and spots him. She quickly approaches, concerned by his uneasy expression. Xiaowei freezes. The very person he's supposed to eliminate stands before him. But before he can react, Reiko's phone rings. On the other end is the generic Xiaowei shouting for help. She says something's wrong in her apartment. Reiko assumes it's the fire alarm that is malfunctioning, and her gaze immediately lands on Xiaowei. After all, he works in built-in maintenance. With no choice, Xiaowei finds himself being dragged by Reiko to the generic's apartment. On the way, Yao Mei calls and Reiko updates her about the situation. They agree to meet at the apartment instead. Meanwhile, inside the Goldfish Tea House, Hajime meets up with Tao. Tao wants to understand just how much Hajime knows about this Kowloon. As it turns out, Hajime is more aware than he lets on. He knows that two versions of the same person can't coexist in Kowloon. He recalls Old Man Chun, his occasional mahjong colleague, who he witnessed entering Kowloon one day only for his duplicate to vanish instantly. With this, Hajime assumes that's true for most people in the city. Unlike Tao, it can be noticed that Hajime isn't overly cautious. He eats the food in Kowloon without hesitation and doesn't question much of what he sees. As their conversation deepens, Tao brings up his own observations. He mentions that not everything in Kowloon was faithfully replicated. For instance, he once built a small hut for stray cats behind the cafe, but when he went to look for it, it wasn't there. At that moment, a TV advertisement flickers onto the cafe's screen. It shows a woman joyfully visiting a clone of her beloved pet that had passed away. The clone mimics the same habits and behaviors as the original, making her feel as if nothing had changed. Tao quietly reflects on this. His feelings are the complete opposite. He finds it unsettling. To him, having someone imitate the dead feels more painful than comforting. It's not just unhealthy for the grieving owner, but also unfair to the cat. Meanwhile, back in the generic Xiaowei's apartment, the real Xiaowei finishes fixing the fire alarm. The two finally meet face to face and are introduced, oddly enough, sharing the same name. As the generic Xiaowei expresses her gratitude, the real one quietly observes her extravagant wardrobe and striking fashion sense. Yao Mei also mentions their similarity in enjoying fancy clothes, so the real Xiaowei is forced to admit it. Then he finally reveals the vest Yao Mei made for him. When the generic Xiaowei compliments it, something in him softens, tears well up unexpectedly. His past once felt so painful for him, but now it feels strangely warm. The generic Xiaowei, noticing his tears, hands him a tissue. He accepts it with a grateful smile and shyly compliments her outfit in return. With this, Yao Mei suddenly grows curious. Meanwhile, Hajime and Tao are heading out, and Tao brings up one last detail, the case of the two Xiaoheis. The original remains, yet the generic has not vanished. Hajime is taken aback, but what catches his attention more is how Tao refers to Xiaowei as a guy. Tao then admits Xiaowei as a guy. They just never told Hajime because his cluelessness was funny. When Hajime heads out first, Tao happens to take a glance at the back entrance of the Goldfish Tea House. His eyes widen. The cat hut he once built now stands there, replicated exactly as it was in the old Kowloon. At that moment, in the generic Xiaowei's apartment, she suddenly vanishes into thin air. The real Xiaowei, sensing it immediately, understands what is happening. A strange sensation washes over him, and he collapses to the floor. A few moments later, Xiaowei finally wakes up. Yao Mei and Reiko are still in front of him, waiting for him to recover. As he'd expected, they never found the generic Xiaowei again. He explains that it is only natural, as this Kowloon is Hajime's creation. All of his investigation isn't complete yet. He knows this Kowloon is based on Hajime's memory, how he remembered it a few years ago. It replicates what he recognizes, while the rest remain incomplete. It is a setup. When the original enters, the second version disappears. Since Hajime believes Xiaowei was a girl, her two versions were able to coexist. But now that he has likely learned the truth, the generic version vanished. Yao Mei and Reiko struggle to believe the Xiaowei standing before them is the real one. His appearance has changed so drastically in just 3 years. Then he reveals the reason he's in Kowloon. First, to investigate the city under a corporation's request, and second, to kill Reiko. He accepted the job in hopes of returning to his original form. He explains what Yulong told him about Gene Terra, a technology that can download memories not into a clone, but into a vessel already replicated. Though it sounds absurd, Xiaowei believes it as he already has a generic version of himself. Still, the question of whether a generic can exist outside Kowloon remains unanswered. Yao Mei immediately realizes it is the work of the Hebi Numa group. Now that Xiaowei's wish will never come true, and with both Yao Mei and Reiko showing him the value of this world, he decides to leave for good. Knowing too much, he fears the Hebi Numa group might come after. Before he can leave, Yao Mei grabs his vest and some of the generic Xiaowei's dresses, handing them to him, insisting that he doesn't need to give up these parts of himself. She also offers him a way out. Her mother is an influential figure with powerful connections, enough to keep even the Hebinumas from reaching him if he stays by Yao Mei's side. Riko doesn't understand at first, so Yao Mei apologizes. She has been thinking about her mother lately and how she keeps running from her past. Now she decides it's time to face it head on. To help Riko realize her absolute self, Yao Mei must first find her own and return when she is ready. Riko walks with them to the edge of Kowloon. They bid their goodbyes. That's when Riko notices Yao Mei is wearing the earrings her mother chose for her on one ear. Before parting, Yao Mei warns Riko about the pills she saw in the real Reiko's memories. She needs to be careful. Xiaowei also has something to say. Riko is the only thing not replicated in Hajume's creation. That alone, he believes, is proof that she can become her absolute self. As the two walk away from the city, the dresses in Xiaowei's hands slowly begin to disappear. But he doesn't mind. Even if the clothes vanish, he believes he can carry them in his heart. However, when he opens his vest, the stitches Yao Mei made are still there. With quiet joy, they turn back, hoping to share it with Reiko, only to be met by a pile of ruins where Kowloon once stood. Reiko sits in a cafe, her gaze fixed on the date displayed on her phone screen. Thoughts of Xiaowei and Yao Mei drift into her mind. Both had set off to seek their absolute selves. She attempts to call Yao Mei, but there is no response. The silence reminds her of Yao Mei's final words before leaving, that she would return once she had a decision. In another part of Kowloon, Miyuki walks along the street when he sees a group of children rushing toward an alley. The scene triggers an old memory. He and Yulong used to do the same way at Dr. Wong's clinic, where his mother was often treated. Dr. Wong had always warned her not to strain herself, though those words were never heeded, so he continued to prescribe the same medication. Years later, Miyuki watched as demolition machines tore down the same clinic. It led the operation himself, yet the sight of it still lingers in his thoughts. Back in his house, Miyuki receives a call. His father's voice is on the other end. Though Miyuki claims to be home, his father says otherwise. What his father meant was not Miyuki's house, but the family estate, where he had been waiting for quite some time. When Miyuki arrives, he attempts to update him on the Zirconian project, but his father shows no interest. Instead, he begins speaking as though Miyuki is still a child, discussing plans for his future and offering to give him a house. The conversation grows stranger when he calls Miyuki Horan. Miyuki calmly corrects him, but his father ignores the correction, continuing to speak as though he is actually speaking with Horan. The tension quietly starts building as Miyuki listens, uncertain how to respond. Before things escalate further, the butler steps in to announce that dinner is ready, bringing an abrupt end to the conversation. Still reeling, Miyuki steps out into the hallway, where his father's doctor approaches with a grim look. The doctor explains that his father has been suffering from dementia for the previous year. It was a deliberate decision not to inform Miyuki sooner. Now, however, the condition is worsening, and the doctor advises him to begin planning countermeasures while he still has the chance. Miyuki remains composed even after hearing about his father's condition. He walks slowly down the long, quiet hallway of their mansion. As he passes a familiar vase displayed, he suddenly knocks it off. It crashes to the floor and shatters into pieces. He stands there for a moment in silence, then bursts into uncontrollable laughter. Meanwhile, Yulong arrives in Kowloon and heads straight to Hajume's office. Upon entering, he finds only Hajume's manager present. The manager greets him politely, and Yulong lies and tells him he has an appointment with Hajume. When the manager offers to reach out to Hajume or take down any concerns, Yulong casually declines, saying he'll just return another time. But just before he turns to leave, something catches his eye. On the nearby bulletin board, he notices a list and sees Reiko's assigned area for the day. However, when Yulong steps out of the office, his phone rings. It's Miyuki. The news he shares is unexpected. He no longer intends to seek revenge. Calmly, Miyuki tells Yulong about his father's condition. He has dementia. While the revelation shocks Yulong, Miyuki admits he has already noticed the signs. This makes Yulong wonder if Miyuki had kept it from him on purpose, slowing things down before Yulong could act. It's clear now Miyuki has been consumed by Kowloon. When Yulong asks what he plans to do next, Miyuki has no clear answer. The call ends with silence. Yulong lowers his phone and stares blankly ahead. Now, without revenge to chase, all that's left with Miyuki is the weight of regret. On the other hand, Tao keeps trying to reach Miyuki, but every call goes straight to voicemail. He's already heard the news. Miyuki has resigned as president of the Hebi Numa group, and this only heightens his concern. He can't bring himself to leave Miyuki alone now. Meanwhile, Yulong sits beneath the Gene Terra, his laptop resting on his knees. He types in lines of code, trying to delete something, but each attempt fails. Frustrated, he laughs bitterly. Even now, he can't erase the very thing he created. Leaning back against the bench, he stares up with frustration. Then, out of desperation, he grabs his phone and dials Xiaohei. The call doesn't go through at first, but moments later, Xiaohei returns the call. When Yulong answers, it's Yaomei's voice on the other end, scolding him for involving Xiaowei and planning to harm Reiko. With that voice on the line, Yulong instantly recognizes her. It's the same woman he spoke to in Hong Kong. Yaomei quickly catches on too. When Yulong casually brings up the chocolate from that day, her irritation flares even more. But Yulong isn't in the mood to provoke her further. He's no longer interested in killing Reiko. Their plans have shifted. Hajime is now the target. After seeing Kowloon with his own eyes, Yulong realizes something. It's a manifestation of Hajime's memory. Every food stall is precisely as it was before the demolition. The only one who could replicate such detail would be someone who lived through it, and someone whose regret shaped it. There are also other possible candidates in his mind, but talking to Yaomei back in Hong Kong gave him the information he needed. Satisfied with the lead, Yulong abruptly ends the call, leaving Yaomei more unsettled than before. Yulong continues on his way, determined to find Reiko. Meanwhile, Reiko is at Xiaowei's apartment, trying to secure a deal for something she needs. As she glances around the room, memories of Xiaowei and Yaomei fill her mind. Both of them are moving forward with their lives, and she realizes she should too. Later that day, Reiko resumes tracing the origins of the medication once used by the real Reiko. Just as she's about to wear the glasses again to continue her search, she's interrupted by Yulong. He casually introduces himself as a friend of Yaomei's, but Reiko immediately finds it strange. Yaomei never mentioned him before. Noticing her skepticism, Yulong drops the act and admits that he's one of the developers of Gene Terra. He tells her he holds valuable knowledge about Kowloon. Seeing Riko's curious expression, he offers to explain more if she agrees to walk with him. They walk through the dim alleyways, and as they pass a narrow corner, Reiko notices a familiar cat. Her thoughts are interrupted when Yulong stops and peels away one of the old talismans plastered on the wall. Beneath it are the words, "Turn back." Yulong frowns, recognizing the warning as Hajime's work since he was the one who reconstructed this version of Kowloon. What puzzles Yulong is why Hajime would leave a threat meant for him. Reiko then speaks, explaining that the real Reiko didn't want anyone uncovering the truth about the medicine she purchased there. It came from the Hebi Numa group. Yulong instantly recognizes them. The medicine in question was a cold remedy, which is now erased from online sources. But he remembers, when taken in large amounts, it caused hallucinations. While they do not fully understand why the real Reiko took the medication, Yulong knows that it was often misused as a relaxant, leading to dangerous side effects, including death. Though its sale was eventually stopped, the damage had already been done. In the absence of accountability, the Hebi Numa group opted to bury the truth by demolishing Kowloon altogether. But not long after, reports emerged of people claiming to see Kowloon in its original form. Fueled by Hajime's regret, the generic Terra, which was initially designed as a digital replica, began functioning on its own. The gene Terra was originally promoted to bring eternal life, but in truth, it is just a faulty system that could preserve memories. Despite knowing this, the management pressed on, convinced it would succeed eventually. As part of their continued efforts, the Hebi Numa group re-entered this Kowloon under the guise of reconstructing the Hebi Numa General Medical Center and offering free medical checkups to residents to investigate them. Another thing Yulong points out about Kowloon is its unchanging season. While time passes normally between Kowloon and the outside world, it is always summer there. Reiko hadn't noticed this before, but even Yaomei never realized it before either. Eventually, they arrive at the familiar door where the real Reiko once bought her medication. As they approach, Yulong slips the talisman he peeled from the wall into a narrow slot in the door, along with money. Almost immediately, a hand from the other side passes them the medicine. Just as Reiko turns to leave, Yulong stops her with a question. He asks her if she can die. Meanwhile, at the Hebi Numa Medical Center, Tao bursts in, overwhelmed with frustration, demanding to know Miyuki's whereabouts. Back in the alleyway, Yulong urges Reiko to push forward to see what happens next. He believes that Hajime's regret centers around the real Reiko, and if she disappears, perhaps this entire Kowloon will vanish too. But Reiko stands firm. She argues that she is not the same Reiko he's referring to. No matter how Yulong tries to provoke her, she doesn't waver. She declares that she doesn't exist for anyone else and that she has the right to choose. If there's a chance to save Hajime, she would, just to prove that she is her own person. Yulong finds her words bold, but he knows it's still a gamble. Even so, Reiko stands her ground. Because the decision is her own and she's certain she won't regret it. Back to her is what it means to live. Hearing this, Yulong finally yields, satisfied by her conviction. At that same time, Miyuki steps into Kowloon. Yulong hands Reiko the medication, half convinced she might be right. Maybe even if she dies, this version of Kowloon won't disappear. Still, he intends to find Hajime and leave it to him. If Reiko truly acts on her words, perhaps she can survive. After he leaves, Reiko drops to the ground. For a while, she thinks she would be dead. Meanwhile, Miyuki walks deeper into the familiar streets of Kowloon. A particular alley catches his eye, one he used to walk through with his mother. He follows it, and there it is, Dr. Wong's old clinic. But when he opens the door, it's empty. As he steps back onto the street, Tao arrives, spotting him just in time. At that moment, Miyuki admits the truth. He was born in Kowloon. Tao nods. Somehow, it all makes sense now. But something still feels off. This version of Kowloon doesn't seem like the original. Tao then shares what he knows. It's Hajime's Kowloon, built from his memories. The eye drops produced 3 years ago were recently sold here again. Miyuki looks up at the sky as he shares his story. He was just a child when he was adopted by the Hebi Numa family under the promise that his ill mother would be cured. But that promise was never kept, and she died in the end. Revenge was once his goal, but ever since entering Kowloon eventually faded. Now, in his father's eyes, he is his biological son, which Miyuki finds deeply unfair, having lost so much in the process. For a moment, he admits that he wishes he considered Teo's advice from long ago. Tao sighs, then promises Miyuki that no matter what happens, he will always be by his side. If Miyuki wants to run away, we'll take him far away. With that, Miyuki turns toward him, and for the first time, he takes Teo's hand, accepting the offer. Unbeknownst to them, Yulong watches from a distance, silently observing. Meanwhile, Reiko walks alone through the alleys of Kowloon. She reflects deeply. This world is built from Hajume's memories, yet she alone seems not to be replicated. She wonders what is Hajume's plan for all of this. Finally, Reiko spots Hajime sitting alone on a bench, sweat soaking through his shirt. She approaches him. He says he's there to check on an apartment that reported a leak. But Reiko doesn't waste time. She asks if he plans to stay in this Kowloon forever. He says yes, so Reiko pulls out the pills she bought earlier, still unable to understand his choice. With this, Hajime rises from his seat. He reflects on how the past summers were never like this, how she used to be nothing more than a trace of the real Reiko, yet somehow became something more. He admits he's confused at first, but eventually gives in. This Kowloon, he says, has no beginning or end, just a loop of endless summers. But when she appears, it feels like something is starting and ending. That thought troubles him, but then again, he's always been troubled. Suddenly, the ground shakes. Reiko loses her balance and falls to her knees, but Hajime stays standing, watching everything calmly. Around them, people in Kowloon begin to vanish one by one. The ground in Kowloon shakes as buildings and structures crumble to the ground. Miyuki and Tao are about to escape the chaos when Miyuki suddenly sees his younger self running through the streets with Yulong. At the same time, an old man standing in front of an abandoned store sees a vision of his wife inside. But it quickly fades and the store is empty again, tears falling from his eyes. Tao wonders why the city is copying people's memories. Above them, the generic terrace starts to spark and flicker. Even Miyuki's mother appears in this version of Kowloon. Fearing that things might get worse, Tao tells Miyuki that they must leave now. Meanwhile, Reiko watches everything from a distance. Hajime stands still, unfazed by the collapsing city in front of him. After the commotion and as things start to calm down a bit, Reiko realizes Hajime is no longer in sight, so she starts to panic and runs through the broken streets, searching for him. Roads crack, buildings collapse, and familiar faces around her vanish one after another. Suddenly, the ground beneath her breaks open. Reiko loses her balance and falls into the deep water beneath the ruins of Kowloon. Reiko panics as she tries to breathe, only to realize she's drowning. Just as she starts to lose consciousness, a goldfish swims toward her. It's Success, her goldfish. Slowly, Reiko opens her eyes and recognizes the familiar creature in front of her. Success gently touches her cheek and a golden glow surrounds her. Suddenly, she can breathe and move freely underwater. With new strength, Reiko starts looking for Hajime. On the other hand, Hajime is still playing mahjong with the elders in Kowloon, as calm as ever. One of the old men talks about the lemon chicken he ate yesterday and pretends he was on a date with a young girl, but Hajime knows it was just his granddaughter. He chats with them like always, checking in on their place and asking simple questions. Hajime wants to keep the game going, but soon Mr. Hio disappears without warning. After that, Kin fades away right before their eyes. Now, only the old man from earlier remains. He tells Hajime that they can't keep going like this forever and urges him to end it all. But even as everything around him vanishes, Hajime stays. The old man, now content after seeing his wife again in their old home, even though it shouldn't be part of Hajime's memories, decides it's time to go. He stands up and tells Hajime to move on. Before he leaves, he thanks Hajime for giving him a beautiful dream to live in, even just for a short while. Then he leaves Hajime alone and still calm despite everything falling apart around him. Meanwhile, Reiko continues to follow Success and reaches their office. Inside, her manager is waiting and asks her about Hajime. But before she can answer, he starts to glitch and then vanishes too. Reiko remembers the last time she talked with Hajime, when he admitted he had always felt troubled. Her thoughts also return to Yulong's warning. If she goes through with this, there's a chance neither she nor Hajime will get redemption. She now realizes this chaos is the result of her actions. If nothing changes, everyone in Kowloon, including herself, might disappear completely. Reiko watches as her office and manager disappear, then keeps walking with Success by her side, until Success can no longer continue with her. Reiko wonders aloud if maybe Success has found her absolute self too. She says it as a joke, but Success replies that it's because Reiko gave her a name. Hearing this, Reiko looks back, but Success is no longer there. Now alone, Reiko climbs the stairs toward where Hajime is. At the top, she sees a closed door with words written on it, "Don't open it." But without hesitation, she opens the door and steps inside. Inside, she finds the generic Terra acting like a projector. It's casting an image onto a large screen. Reiko quietly takes a seat and watches. To her surprise, the screen shows the date, August 30th. On the screen, Hajime was talking with the real Reiko. They were discussing the future of Kowloon. She said she loved that summer. It was her ideal one. She explained that she wanted to live an ordinary life, one with no clear beginning or end. Walking through the streets of Kowloon, Hajime wondered where all the shops would go after the demolition. But Reiko only smiled and said this was her ideal summer. She loved how ordinary everything felt. Out of nowhere, Hajime suddenly asked her to marry him. It seems strange, but on an ordinary day at the end of August, Hajime proposed. Reiko just laughed. She said that because he proposed this day, it had now become special. But Hajime insists, saying he thought about how he should have asked Tao for help with a surprise. He didn't even have a ring or go down on one knee, so it was as plain as it could be. Reiko didn't give him an answer right away. Instead, she told him to wait until tomorrow, the last day of August. That night, they went to the Goldfish Tea House where Tao laughed when he heard about the proposal. To remember the moment, Tao took out his camera and snapped a picture of them together. The next day was the last day of August, the 31st. Hajime prepared to visit Reiko's apartment, but she didn't answer the door. After waiting for a while, he decided to use his spare key to enter. Inside, he looked around but couldn't find her at first. Then he saw her on the veranda sitting lifeless. Not long after her death, the demolition of Old Kowloon began. He watched everything fall apart with his own eyes, but all he could do was stand there and stare at the ruins. 1 year later, Hajime returned to the site. He walked through the rubble and made his way back to what was once Reiko's apartment. There, lying untouched among the wreckage, were her glasses. He picked them up gently, filled with regret, and blamed himself for what had happened to her. Just as Hajime was breaking down in tears, the generic terrace seemed to react. Slowly, the ruined Kowloon began to restore itself, returning to how it used to be. Hajime stood in shock as he saw Reiko sleeping peacefully in her bed. Inside the apartment, everything was back in place, just like before. Still overwhelmed, Hajime gently left Reiko's glasses on the table and stepped out. That day felt like he had returned to his old life. He worked with Reiko again in their old real estate office. After work, they walked out together and went to eat, just like the old times. But Hajime noticed something strange about Kowloon. Every time the calendar reached the 31st of August, the date would reset back to July 1st. Now back in the present, Reiko notices Hajime sitting in front of her, also watching the same memories. Without turning around, Hajime asks why she is peeking into his memories. Reiko doesn't answer directly. Instead, she asks how many times he has repeated that same summer. Hajime doesn't know. All he knows is that something feels wrong and he doesn't understand how things ended up like this. At first, Hajime believed he was just dreaming. But after speaking with Mr. Chow from Hong Kong, he realized everything was more complicated than it looked. In this Kowloon, everything was carefully copied to match that exact summer. Only Reiko turned out to be different. Even though the summer stayed the same, Reiko slowly changed over time. After the movie ends, Reiko and Hajime step out of the room. But instead of a hallway, they find themselves in the Goldfish Tea House. They sit down quietly and continue their conversation. Hajime begins to understand why Reiko isn't fully replicated in this version of Kowloon. After she passes, he realizes she was always a mystery to him. If he never truly knew her, then how could this world recreate her completely? Reiko, who wants to understand her past decision, admits she can only discover more about the medication she took. Maybe it's true, one person can never completely understand another. But as she reflects more deeply, the answer becomes clear. She once believed that if she escaped this place, Hajime would realize she is different from the real Reiko. But now she knows that's not the point. The truth is the only person who can say who you truly are is yourself and not anyone else. After their talk, Reiko leads Hajime to meet someone. When they arrive, Reiko wants to go inside with him, but she stops. She knows that only Hajime can save himself now. In the same way, only she can save herself. Reiko wants to leave on her own terms. Even if there's a chance she might disappear, she will not regret it because it is her own decision to do so. At that moment, something clicks in Hajime's mind. He finally understands. The reason why Reiko always felt different, even though she looked exactly like the Reiko he once knew, is because she was never just a copy. She has always been herself from the very beginning. When Reiko turns to leave, Hajime steps through the door. Inside, he sees another version of himself, broken but smiling. In that world, he arrives on time. Reiko never takes the pills. She doesn't need to. The scene makes Hajime pause. He wonders if things could have been different. Would things be any different if he had come sooner, if he had stopped her, or even if he had done nothing at all? No matter the answer, he realizes that regret will always remain. He wants to start over. But even after watching the same summer repeat again and again, he understands one truth. He can't start all over again. So instead, he chooses to forgive himself. After everything he realizes, Hajime drops to his knees, collapsing on the floor as he breaks down in tears. Meanwhile, Reiko walks toward the edge of the city when she suddenly sees a familiar cat, the one from the northern side. She follows it and discovers the real Reiko sitting across from the landlady. The landlady listens quietly before giving advice. The real Reiko talks about wanting to risk everything, unsure if she's ever truly won in life because she depends too much on fate. She feels lost, not knowing what choices should count as victories. Reiko listens silently, then turns and walks away. She heads straight for the border. After a long pause, she steps outside Kowloon for the very first time. Her whole body is now beyond the edge, but she doesn't disappear. Above her, the generic terra begins to crumble, turning into ashes. The replica of Kowloon fades along with it, revealing the city in its original form, ruined. At that moment, Reiko hears a familiar voice calling from a distance. Yaomei is shouting her name. When Yaomei sees her, she runs and hugs her tightly. It's the first time they've seen each other again. As it turns out, Yulong contacted Yaomei and Xiaohei, telling them to wait outside the border, since they can no longer see Kowloon from their side. Reiko asked about Yaomei's mom, but the zirconia earring she's wearing already tells an answer. For a moment, Yaomei worries about Hajime, since Kowloon has returned to ruins and summer is now over. But then something else catches their attention. Success is outside in her tank, struggling without water. They rush over to save her just in time. From a distance, Tao and Miyuki witness the scene and Yulong silently watches it all unfold as well. 2 years later, Reiko wakes up in her new apartment. Success swims peacefully in her bowl by the window. 2 years have passed since Reiko left Kowloon and she now has a completely different life. She now works at the front desk of a travel agency, helping people plan their trips abroad. At night, Riko walks through the streets of a new city. She and Yaomei plan to meet at a restaurant, but Yaomei is running late, so Riko goes straight to the restaurant alone to wait. The news plays nearby, reporting that the Jean Terra is still missing after 2 years. The Hebinuma group has officially dissolved, and Miyuki hasn't appeared in public since. While waiting, Reiko opens a book to read. Suddenly, Hajime appears in front of her. It's been 2 years since they last saw each other. Hajime looks like he wants to say something, but before he can, their order arrives. He grabs a piece of chicken and Riko quickly scolds him. It's supposed to be for Yaomei. Still, the two of them begin to bicker, just like they used to. Their teasing fills the air as the night grows darker and the city lights shine quietly around them.